Oh, I see what you mean.
And here we go.
G'day, fans. I've got the thing stuffed up. Look, we've got our umbrellas because apparently it's going to be pouring with rain tomorrow. So here we are. We're protecting ourselves. We've got the Star Wars one. We've got the Docky Who one. It is all very, very good for those who are watching this show. Yes, apparently he's going to be piddling down quite significantly in the next couple of days. What do you reckon, Mr. Aaron?
I heard a rumor if you're wearing that umbrella, you can pick up the next episode of Andor without having a TV, and I can watch the Doctor Who special directly beamed to my head.
Love it. How good is that? So, yes, they're ultra rare collectibles. You can go out there and get them yourself. Welcome, everybody. Well done. Welcome, everybody, to the show. Yes, it is actually a bit cold. It is a bit wet. And yes, you are right. Andor episode 6 was out this evening. I haven't seen it yet, but hopefully it was all particularly good and groovy. And we've got lots of people joining us, which is very, very groovy. We've got a good show tonight, actually. We've got some really interesting stuff to cover off. Problem Mr. Aaron has been a very busy lad over the past few days, which he'll tell you all about a bit later on. Absolute madness. But if you want to dangle a carrot, Mr. Aaron, dangle away.
Did you see me sigh? That's like heavy as the head that wears the clearing the deceased estate.
Oh, geez, that's all very, very, very deep and meaningful, isn't it? So very good stuff. I like it. Nothing can keep the rain off these two drips. Absolutely love it. Very, very cool. So yes, there's a lot going on. We're just probably going to get straight into it because there's a fair bit to cover off. But yeah, welcome everybody for joining us this evening on a wet day here in Melbourne, which, as I said, is going to get a lot worse as of tomorrow. So yes, very, very cool. All right, so we are going to move on. Anything you want to say before we kick everything off, Mr. Aaron? Because there's a lot to discuss.
Thanks for everyone who's joining us straight away off tonight. It is a busy show. It relates back to last week's show and tomorrow night's show, and it's going to be a big one.
It is indeedy dirty. So let's start. No mucking around. Let's get straight. Hang on. What? Hi guys, did you hear that I got Sci-Fi Zone its first international sponsorship? It would be its second actually, because we got international sponsorship 2 weeks ago from Joe Penn. No, it wasn't Joe Penn. It was Joe Penn, wasn't it? No, it wasn't. No, it was Peter Davidson. Oh God. Yeah. So whatever Rusky Babes did, excellent work, sir. But yeah, I think someone beat you to the punch 2 weeks ago, Mr. Rusky Babes. So there you go.
I wouldn't complain about getting another sponsorship. That's all fantastic.
Oh, yeah, the more the merrier. Absolutely fantastic. So well done, sir. Good on you for flying our flag for us. Where was I? Right over here. All right, so we're going to get into something very, very exciting. Let's kick it all off and away we go. All right, so we're talking about the ultra rare collectibles that are now coming out there, Mr. Aaron. Is that correct?
Yeah, there's a few things this week we're going to cover off. And I think they're pretty well. Most of them are pretty cool. One of them is a bit iffy. Let's. What have we got coming up first?
So, is this from the movie, the Munsters film? Because I don't recall Grandpa ever having a big ass mustache like that. Is that correct?
Yes. So the Munsters movie has been released with a whimper straight onto the internet because not even streaming services wanted it. It was so bad. I found it on one of the dark sides of the internet and downloaded it and watched it. And now I've watched it. I can recommend you don't. I watched it so you don't have to. If you do watch it, I would watch it with the colors turned right down and it might be a better movie. But anyway, they've decided to release toys from it. And I think the toys are probably more appealing visually than the movie ended up being. There isn't a lot of Munster merchandise that comes out, and when it does come out, it goes pretty fast. Now, whether fans will actually want new versions of the Munsters over the original, that's debatable. And I actually think if they knew how this movie was going to turn out, they would have been better off just reissuing some of the old toys. What did you think of the looks of those, though, Dags?
Didn't work for me at all. So as I saw the grandpa go, hang on, that's not right. If you can digitally remove the mustache, you can make him the old-fashioned version from the TV series of the 60s. I agree with you. Stick with the original. It doesn't make sense to merchandise something from a film that clearly died in the arse. So I reckon they'll end up in the $2 bin pretty quickly. So, yeah, crazy.
Yeah, crazy.
Phil said Sylvester McCoy was the seventh night was Igor. Is that true?
He was. Oh, and he regenerates into a bat in it as well.
So there you go. So from the Seventh Doctor all the way down to Igor, there's a bit of a not exactly a promotion, is it? A sort of more like a demotion. So, indeedy doddy. All right. So next one that's come up. I don't know what the deal is with this, but you can explain this one to me. It's clearly the Joker in some kind of it's from a comic series. Is that right?
Yeah, well, it's an interesting one because McFarlane Toys have picked up the Superpowers line, and everyone was super excited because it is one of those collectible 80s lines that a lot of people love. This is the first figure they've released that wasn't released originally the first time round, the He Who Laughs Joker. And I'm not really impressed. I think if you're going to do a retro toy line, stick with the original retro toys that everyone wants. Don't release the first 6 or 7 and then start producing original. Now, this is because I am a toy fan and like collecting toys. I'm not so much a comic book fan, so I don't know this version of the Joker. But I thought of all the versions they're going to release, this is not one that really impressed me. You are more of a Batman fan than me. What did you think of this?
I might be a Batman fan, but I'm not a fan of the villains. I'm only a fan of the main character. So this didn't do anything for me at all. It's very funny. I looked at this thing around his head, and I couldn't help but think it reminded me of Geordie LaForge from Star Trek: The Next Generation. It's his visor. So this is what I thought it was. But not pushing my buttons. So yeah.
Okay, well, the next one is an impressive one, I think, for anyone who collects Masters of the Universe.
Oh, spoiler alert. Joe said, yeah, it's like a Hellraiser crossover. Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, I don't get it. I think it would be for hardcore fans. I mean, people who read the comics don't necessarily want to buy the merchandise for the comics. They might go, that looks great. But whether they actually physically want to buy it, I don't know. It's a bit of a tough one. I think, each to their own. But
generally toys based off movie franchises work better because there's a broader audience, and movies a more toynamic kind of medium for toy creators to use stuff. They do, of course, release toys based on comic books, but if you look at the mass release toys in toy shops, it's generally off a blockbuster movie. And if you look at the specialist toys that are in sort of Minotaur books or alternate worlds, they're the ones that are specifically aimed at comic book fans. So yeah, it is a more specific market when they do it like that.
yeah, I hear what you're saying. I was thinking that if you're going to do the Joker from a comic, you'd do one that's like a very famous comic, like Killing Joke or whatever. If you do one that's popular but not like a super successful, people will say, I like the Joker, but I don't necessarily like what they've done with this action figure. So I don't know. I mean, it's like the Munsters one. It could work, it may not, but either way, see what happens. But you got to collect them all, as they say. Now, you mentioned about Masters of the Universe. Now there's a few pictures of this. If you're a bit of a Motu fan, you're going to go off your nut. So Mr. Aaron, tell us all about what this is.
So most kids growing up in the 80s had or wish they had Snake Mountain or Castle Grayskull, where He-Man and Skeletor used to fight out their battles. There was a third, well, the Fright Zone was the third. There was a fourth massive playset that came out and pretty much missed Australia, except for a couple of shops that imported it in especially, and that was the Eternia playset. And the Eternia playset was one of the last big toys they released in the He-Man line. It comes with a monorail, 3 towers. So you've got the central Eternia Tower, you've got Viper Tower that represents Snake Mountain, and you've also got Grayskull Tower. And you had the monorail that runs around all of them. The original playset, the monorail, was made out of a plastic that was so brittle, most kids broke it putting it together the first time they used it. And it is one of the harder toys to get. Just getting it in the country is impossible because it's too big for regular post, and it is a rare playset. So you're looking for the original one, probably 2,000 to 3,000 plus now, or 5,000 for a boxed mint one. Now this one's a little bit cheaper, but not much. It's a $500 US playset off the bat. So getting it into Australia and finding it and all of that, you're probably looking close to double that in Australian dollars. That said, it's still cheaper than buying the original, and probably will be harder to get than the original because it's a HasLabs project where, you know, they make up sort of the ones on pre-order. I think it will definitely go into production. But it will have it won't have a huge production run. As you can see, if you're a Star Wars, if you're a Masters of the Universe fan, this is a fantastic playset to have because it gives you the opportunity to display many figures at the same time over different levels. And one of the things, if you display toys, leveling in different levels makes something look a whole heap better. And because of this has got towers at different sizes and an elevator down the middle and the monorail and steps and all of that kind of thing, you can have it as a central piece to your collection if you've got the room to display it.
Yeah, it looks pretty big. When you said $500 American, I thought, oh, there's a bit of money there. I twigged on, okay, you got Grayskull on this side, you got Snake Mountain on that side. What's this one in the middle?
That's Eternia Tower. So it's the place set is called Eternia. I think it's based on the ultimate battleground, and Eternia Tower rose from underneath Eternia, and the heroes and villains fought it out to control Eternia Tower.
Cool, no worries. Now, questions come up. It's quite a good one, actually, from Christy. Toynamic, is that a term that you invented? Is it a common term, or is it?
No, there's a few. There's toyetic, toynamic. Toyetic is something that can be turned into a toy from a movie. Toynamic is more a dynamic toy, so something that's in a movie that's sort of dynamic, so toy people will grab it. There are a couple of others. If you watch shows like, I guess, The Toys That Made Us, or some people in the industry use those kind of things. Have you heard them before?
No, only when you were saying them. I thought it might have been a common term. I think because you've used the term toyetic on a number of occasions. But yeah, toynamic I hadn't heard before. But
Okay,
I kind of get it. I know what it means. But yeah, so
I think they've both been around since about Batman and Robin.
very cool. Regarding the Motu set, Joe's mentioned it's a bit too much. It is a big outlay, and of course, the irony being that it's meant to be. I mean, He-Man has always been a toy for kids, right? And they build the big sets for kids whose parents have got a bit of money and all the rest of it. But when they produce this big ass set, and it's going to cost 500, you said 500 American. That's correct, yeah?
Yeah.
So that's about 700 and something bucks Australian. That's a lot to give to a kid at Christmas time. So there you go, kid, off, knock yourself out, whether they're into He-Man or not. And there's a good chance some of them aren't, because He-Man was clearly an 80s thing. So it could end up being the toy that you give to a kid who goes, I just don't even know what this is, versus saying, okay, well, I've got a lot of money, I'll buy it for myself, which is kind of a bit extreme. So I kind of get it. It's an unusual sort of combination of options, one for the children, one for the adults. And of course, the adults won't play with it or keep it in the box, and the kids may not play with it at all because they don't really understand it. I don't know. That's my theory. So what do you reckon?
I think the thing that you see, it is expensive, but they've released stuff at this level before. You've had the Razor Crest, you've had the Skiff, you've had Unicron, is that the huge Transformer planet? And all of them are very expensive, and everyone says they're too expensive. And then when they hit and they're not available anymore, they instantly sell for 2 or 3 times as much, and they do go. So if you're going to get one, even if you think it's expensive, it's better to get it on the original release, because once they hit the secondary market, you'll never get it at that price again.
Yeah, I got that. I just thought with the Eternia playset, that is clearly aimed at children, not as collectors. That's how I saw it anyway, with all the pretty pictures and the colors and whatever. So, but yeah, other things like the Razor Crest, they're obviously designed for adult collectors. But I kind of get it. It's sort of blurring two very distinct lines at the moment. Two things. Christy said, thanks for filling in what was going on with the toynamic thing. And Philip was obviously completely on the money here. Yeah, toyetic. That was a term that Joel Schumacher used for Batman and Robin. They just, as you said, from when they did the movie, they just got the kids to play with all the toys, and they created the toys for the film, and then made the movie afterwards. So
yeah, the term I made up for myself is toyrotic.
Good on you. Oh, there's a line right there. And yes, kids, when he's looking into the mirror, that's the first thing that strikes him in the head. All right, so last weekend was PAX, the big ass bloody gaming convention thing that was going on. Absolutely fantastic. 50% of this show got to attend, and clearly it wasn't me. Mr. Aaron did. So you want to have a bit of a natter about what you saw and did at good old PAX?
Yeah, so this is the PAX report, and we look at all things collectible on Rip It Off the Card, and part of the PAX experience is the collectibles, and there is a whole different range of collectibles, from retro stuff to new stuff to exclusives, and some people collect the pins from the events as well. But I'm mainly looking at a couple of different things. We won't fill up the whole show with this, but I've got a couple of slides that I took pictures of from the day. So the first thing you notice when you go to PAX is the cosplayers. That's probably because you're going in a lot of queues, so you're mixing with people. And there was a broad range of cosplayers there. There was everything from a lot of the Asian games and a lot of the Asian manga and TV shows. And then there was a lot of video games. And you can see there's a couple from Mortal Kombat, and also an entire family of Zeldas. And there's my son in the middle of a bunny girl and her friend. And I don't know what they were cosplaying, but he jumped in with them and had a photo pretty fast.
You beat me to it. I was going to say, who's this dude? He cosplayed as your kid. How good's that?
And I tell you what, that was the biggest smile he had on him all day.
Oh, I tell you what, I was thinking a lucky dude. Yeah, so indeedy doody didy. So
and Dad, I'm going to ask you something, knowing my son. Who do you think had to go up and ask the girls if they could have a photo?
Geez, that would have looked so funny from their perspective. See this, how can I put this in very, very simple and very elegant terms? This sort of podgy looking, nerdy looking dude walking up and saying, "Hey girls, do you mind if I get a photograph with you? This dude here is my son, if you believe that." Oh, got a bridge to say.
Yeah, fun.
You got to do the old creepy fanboy. Say, "Hey girls."
Yeah, it felt a bit like that, but I was asking for my son, so it was a bit easier to go up and do it. But yes, he was too shy to talk to anyone. I had to do all the talking.
And don't worry, fans, he will, as in Aaron, will digitally insert himself over his kid later on this evening. So that's good stuff. Yes, very good. Anyway, so you went and looked at some stuffs.
Yeah, so maybe that slide isn't so good at showing everything, but the first place I headed for, which induced a big groan out of out of Kale, was the retro gaming section. And the retro gaming section always is interesting because it has a history of gaming stuff. Yes, Koi Rotica indeed. And then they kind of had a timeline of cabinets that you could walk around and see the development of home computer systems that played games like 64 and other home computing systems, and also the cartridge-based Nintendo stuff. So there were some amazing displays of incredibly rare to see in such amazing condition retro games. There was cabinets and cabinets full.
This is a comment of all comments, right? They probably thought you just found some random kid. Hey, kid, here, I'll slip you $50 if you pretend to be mine.
Yeah.
Truer words were never spoken.
Surely, if that was the way it was going to go, the random kid would go up and go to the girls, "Oh, would you mind having a picture with my dad?" But no, it didn't go that way.
That's because you didn't pay him enough. That's the thing. So, yes, very, very good. Where was I? Yes, okay.
And of course, it wouldn't be a rip it off the card if I didn't find some Doctor Who memorabilia. And right in the middle of the PAX Retro, where they have all the pinball machines, there was actually quite a good display of Doctor Who pinball machine memorabilia that I hadn't seen at a PAX before. And there was nothing super rare that I haven't had, but it was actually good to see. And there were a few things that a lot of people who grew up through that time would love to see. And you can't really see it so well, but that picture on the far right is all the different arcade tokens from around Melbourne and Victoria. And I don't know if you'd remember, Dags, instead of coins, you could go and buy tokens, and they'd have different symbols on from some places. And some guy there had a collection of as many as he could find. I thought that's a really good local collectible that you don't see much of and has got a bit of history.
Yeah, very, very groovy. And this is the last picture, I think. So, yeah.
And of course, there's all the other gaming stuff there and collectibles. And what I did find was sets of cards were being sold there. And I tell you what, the cards have gone through the roof. There were sets of Scanlan football cards, Dags, from the 70s, $1,200. And I was like, well, that's double what I thought they were going for at the moment. And then there's single graded Star Wars cards, and they were between $100 and $800 as well, just for a single card from the original Star Wars set. So there was collectibles for every price and budget. But I tell you what, if you wanted the good ones, it was a couple of coins, that's for sure.
You'd be a bit hard pressed saying, "Oh, yeah, I'll buy a Star Wars trading card, a Scanlan's trading card," knowing fully well that when they first came out and you were a kid, you had them everywhere. So that's a bit of a hard one to sort of justify. But like all things, though, I guess if you get it today and you go, it's a huge expense today, 20 years from now, you can put a 2 instead of the 1 and at the front and away you go. But yeah, unbelievable.
It is.
Very good. So just quickly, so PAX for you, you had a good time?
Yeah, I give it 2 thumbs up. It was actually the best PAX I've been to. The one thing I don't think I put a picture up of, there was a guy there. You can see all the games that are in development and new ones. And there was a guy there who was developing new cartridges for the original Nintendo Game Boy. So that old, just a yellow screen and stuff. This guy had done new ones that were on pre-order. So new games for that 30-year-old system, which I thought was pretty cool. I found it really interesting. Lots of Star Wars, lots of stuff if you're into other collectibles, not just gaming as well. So it was a good weekend out.
Yeah, I think because of they haven't been here for about 3 years or 2 years, whatever it is, because of the lockdown. Once they opened up again, it was like the Royal Melbourne Show. Everybody just went, "Boof, mate, we've been missing out." So yes, the return of these events is going to guarantee some massive attendances, which is very, very cool. Now, with that in mind, last week we were talking about the Royal Melbourne Show and the show bags, and the There's had a bit of a good presentation from Lee regarding that. And we've got a bit of an update on the show bag stuff because, believe it or not, Mr. Aaron, you got some stories to tell us about more show bags.
Well, I know everyone thinks I sound crazy when I talk about stuff like this, but often when I invoke anything and put it out into the universe, it all comes back to me. And this is what has happened this week. The day after we did our show on show bags, I got a call from a friend saying, would I come out and look at a deceased estate? And when I got out to the deceased estate, it was an amazing rambling house that was full of everything. But I had a feeling, I don't know why, I had a feeling there were going to be some show bags there. And I said, did this guy happen to keep show bags? And they're like, oh, no, absolutely not. So the day after, I opened a wardrobe and it was full of original show bags. And some of them, I cannot find pictures of them online. You can find the listings of them being sold at the show, but there are actually no photos of them online. So exclusively on Rip It Off the Card, these haven't been passed around or shown everywhere. Here is some original early 90s show bags, an update from last week of some stuff you cannot see anywhere else.
So just to expand on what Aaron said, it was kind of funny because last week we did do the show bag talk, and one of the things that was mentioned in that is that like the history of show bags goes like back decades, and a lot of them have just been lost in the ether of time. There's no photographic records, as you said, and they've just been forgotten. And of course, when Aaron went to the place, the deceased estate, and found these things, he rang me up and he's like, "Oh my God, you wouldn't believe it. We were just talking about show bags only like 2 days prior, and here we are, all original show bags here." And we're going to show you a couple of pictures of them and the things that are inside them. Now, these were complete bags, yeah? They're all the stuff was still inside?
These were complete bags, and they were so complete the guy had cut the little ad for them out of the paper that told you what was in the bag, so I know they're complete. And also we talked about at the show, sometimes they run out of an item, so they substitute it with another item. And he had actually put a line through the item that was missing and put ALT for alternate, and then wrote the item they'd replaced it with, which is probably has to be the only time that's ever turned up ever. So I was pretty amazed by this find.
Very cool. Colin's asked if there's ever going to be a Rip It Off the Card show bag. Wouldn't that be the funniest thing ever? You get all these packeted figures, and your job is to, as you take them out of the bag, they can open up. All right, so
the Greg King bobblehead and the Ronnie would be a cheap rack toy.
No, that's assuming he's even in the bag at all. All right, so let's have a look at the pictures that we've got here. So these original bags from, I assume it's the 80s?
Yes, so I don't know if anyone remember the Gag Magic bag, but it was a regular one that was at the show for years and years and years. That was the only one that didn't have its content. That was just the empty bag. But inside that bag, there was an actual show bag guide from the show and a paper, I think it was from 91 or 92, that was the Ages review goes to the show. And again, I looked at both of those and I couldn't really find any examples online either. So they were pretty amazing to find. And then down the bottom, we've got the Dinosaurs in My Pocket show bag. And it was one of those, I think it said it comes with 17 or 14 16. Dinosaurs. 16, got it right in the end. I'll take one away from whose god it is. But the interesting thing, it came with one less dinosaur. And I thought, oh no, there's one missing. But then I rumbled around at the bottom of the bag and it has actually got an alternate little mark on the what was meant to be there, and it comes with a day's pass to Dream World and a day's pass to Movie World, which I'm tempted to take up and see if I can still redeem. But that was the alternate they gave for stiffing your one dinosaur out of that bag, and that's one of those little stories that I think no one would remember or know. And
it's a Hebrew god, by the way, not just any god. So they just cover that off. Very good.
We have to get our nerd quotes right, don't we? Yeah. Now, here's an interesting one. This would be one that no one would have kept because it's just generic, and that's why it's probably so rare. It's the Jungle Defender show bag, and basically the jungle was being defended by you because it was just full of shit that could destroy stuff. So it's got guns, and it's got rifles, and it's got grenades, and it's got a compass, and it's got a little man who's also firing a gun, and it's got commando face paint. And this was one of those you put online and it doesn't even come up as something that exists. So that's a particularly nice one to be discovered and add to the sort of show bag archives of stuff that you can find and see out there thanks to this find.
It's the real RoboCop thing. The guns. I like on the right-hand side, you've got the machine gun and two types handguns, which I think is very, very cool. I like this comment from Gavin regarding the rip it off the card show bag. The action figures would actually be, Velcro back so you can reseal them, and hours of fun for the whole family. So there you go.
Yes.
Guys, you did it come with a Phantom comic, not in this show bag, obviously. So, so these things are long gone. I mean, nobody would remember these. If they do remember them, they probably certainly wouldn't have them. But how's this for a trip in the Wayback Machine?
Yeah, so this one is another fascinating one because when you go to the show, you could sometimes get two versions of the same bag. You could get version 1 or version 2. So basically, the outer bag would be the same and then it would be stuffed with other stuff. So if you were a gun nut and you felt like taking guns to school and shooting people up, you could get both the Commando show bags because one of them came with guns and grenades and ammo clips and bullet belts and army men. And we're going to look at another one later that is the same outer bag but has a totally different content. I have to say, if you're an Arnold Schwarzenegger collector, that would be one of the rarest items in existence. There would be people who collected everything that came out with him and wouldn't even know this existed. So we're talking from a rarity point of view, the top rarities. From a do I want to display it point of view, it's no replica full-size bust or anything like that. But for some people, this is the kind of thing that collecting's all about.
What I love is you got the grenade way up here, right? And it says GIs, and it says right there, America's best. America loves their grenades. What can I say? Hey, so gotta love that. But yeah, so did he pay $7? It's valued at 17. Did he pay $7 for it back then? Did he?
I think that's what it would have been, yes. And I tell you what, when we were talking about the values were subjective, no way. Some of the stuff in there that the guide says are worth $2.50, you wouldn't pay 20 cents for. They really were ripping kids off.
Yeah, exactly right. And just a variation of the Commando bag.
Yeah, so that's the same bag again. That's version 2 that has an alternate lot of stuff in it. Would have cost the same price but have alternate stuff. And that one's got die-cast cars. And I tell you what, when you weigh those die-cast cars in your hand, they feel like plastic. That's how cheap they are. And then it's got a couple of less guns and weapons and a few more figures and things like that. So that's the alternate Commando bag. Finding one of them would be impossible. If you were after them and you found 2 of them, that's like hitting the jackpot. I think Lee would be able to tell you finds like this just don't happen.
I love the fact, so this is how innocent we were in the 80s. All these things are full of weapons. You got the machine gun, you got the knife up here, right? I bet out of all the 360 show bags that got released in the show this year, the last 2 weeks, none of them had a knife. No. What do you reckon?
Well, I did remember, I was saying to some people in the shop, we were discussing it, and it brought back memories you just don't see now. But you could go to the show for a couple of years and you saw kids, I guess mainly boys, walking around with show bags, and all of them had the guns coming out the top of the bags. And I hadn't thought about that for years because the culture has changed so much. It's just not something that we encourage anymore, but it's one of those things that's a part of our history and has kind of been lost. Every one of these show bags came with big effing guns.
And the funny thing is, like with a lot of the weapons, they're still colored like guns. They're not like colored orange or pink or whatever. Like that knife we saw again. I mean, you could easily think that's the real thing, which is kind of funny. One thing I did miss from the show, I don't know if they still got it, is the stick with the dog's collar on the end. It's like you're walking with an invisible dog. Anyway.
So we did get other show bag, not show bag, but show stuff that was from the show that wasn't in bags as well. This guy collected a lot of military, so any guns and stuff and cowboy stuff is there as well. So there's some pretty interesting things. But we'll keep on with the show bags or we'll never get through the show tonight.
I know, I'm getting there. Gavin's asked, why don't knives have an orange tip? Well, it's just easy just not to produce them because anything can be recolored and look like a replica. Yeah. And Mum would never buy me a bag with weapons. She knew I'd use them on my siblings. Yeah, I reckon that would be a common scenario. How's this one? This is Australian, isn't it? Aussie Warrior.
I know. And these are the ones, again, there is no records of these or pictures of these online. Turns out the Aussie Warrior is just as violent as the Commando from America because, again, it comes with grenades and knives and semi-automatic weapons and paint for your face and weapons clips and things like that. And, again, totally the cheapest of cheap stuff. This is $8.50. I can't believe it. It's more than the Commando one.
Yeah, actually, $8.50 back in the 80s would have been a fair whack of dollars too. So here's a variation of it.
The alternate. Now, look at that for, like, you know, weaponing up. You've got your Uzis, you've got your knives, and the knives are even those notched ones that are banned for real. Like if you're not meant to have them. And then it's got you know, your face paint, and it's got real working, non-working compasses and things like that. But again, a different bag with the same name. That came with your Operation Desert Storm swap cards, and they were so cheap. The cards weren't even cut. You can see they're in a slab, and you have to take them home and cut them up yourself. So that's how cheap the show was. You have to cut your own swap cards.
What are you complaining about? At least they supplied the knife. So, but I tell you what, as a kid, I would have gone apeshit over stuff like that. So I go, okay, let's just tone the thing down. We're going to the 1990s now.
Well, here's something that's amazing. We actually showed the Star Trek Next Generation show bag on the last episode, and ours is more complete and in better condition than the ones that's in the museum. I think it's a Spotswood museum. And ours, the ones that we picked up, all the watches and holograms and things like that are still sealed in the plastic, never came out of them. And it's got a Star Trek Enterprise standee that isn't on the one that's on the site that we looked at last week. So that's got a bit of a rarity too. I'm sure that only came out 1 year for Next Generation, so they should have all been basically the same. Maybe state to state they varied slightly.
I got to say, if all this stuff was in the one bag, that's damn good value for money. There's a lot of good stuff there. So, and I like the fact you get the hats and things with it, so you can show your Trek devotion with pride.
Yep, and this is probably my favourite find out of the show bags. Both versions of the Terminator 2 show bag, both 100% complete. You cannot find anything out of this bag. And I do remember this one, and lots of kids walking around with the T2 sunglasses and thinking they were absolutely cool. But everything in here is rebranded from other bags, like all the guns and everything. It's the same guns, and they've just whacked Terminator stickers on, or a Terminator header card. As we go through, we'll see some of the stuff that's in the other things. And I even think they've rebranded an Incredible Hulk toy by turning it into Terminator just from the colors of it, which makes me laugh. But there's two bags. They were both available, alternate 1 or 2. Now you can see in the middle there, does that look like a Terminator, or does that look like an Incredible Hulk? Because I'm saying it looks like an Incredible Hulk.
I don't recall the Hulk ever wearing pink pants, so it's clearly a T2 supercrawler.
So I don't know. This is pretty amazing to survive, because supercrawlers are kind of those liquidy plastic things you throw on the wall and they don't bounce off. They kind of crawl down the wall, and usually they go sort of solid, but this one seems to have survived. It's quite supple and still wiggly when you shake it around. But you can see they've got the gun, and to make it Terminator, they've just put a nice picture on the hilt of the gun. I think the hilt picture probably comes from the Kenner Terminator line. It looks very similar. That was one I couldn't identify. But you've got your Terminator temporary tattoos, you've got your gun, you've got your headband, you've got a Terminator 2 poster that is still rolled, and it has never been opened. And it has been like that for so long that the elastic band has left a ring mark, as in it's sort of left color around the poster, but I haven't rolled it, and I will leave it there. Oh, there you go, the 92 and 93 versions of the bag. So the guy had got them and put them together and kept them together. But it was good to see if you did collect them, each year would be a different version totally. So you could get one year and totally lose everything, get one next year and totally lose everything. You do not see any of these items ever turn up. And again, if you're a Schwarzenegger or a Terminator fan, they might not be the best items visually, but they would be in the top like 1% of rarity. No one in America has both of those bags. You know, that's impossible to get.
And you made a good point about the fact that people would lose the stuff inside the bags, and here you are with the bags with the stuff in it. And I just realized you got a close-up picture, I think, of the one of the two bags.
Yep, so that's the other bag. So as you can see, it comes with totally different stuff. And the only thing that wasn't in mint condition, in that little tub, it would have been slime or something, but it was silver T1000. And T1000 has dried up and looks like a little tiny emaciated pea inside there. It would have been probably half a tub of goo or something, silver goo, but that one had totally dried up, even though it's totally sealed and there's no way you could get into it. So that's the only thing that's not totally mint about the bag. But saying that, it's still an incredibly rare piece. Every piece there you would have trouble finding individually if you looked for it. Finding a complete bag would be just near impossible.
Very good stuff. So how good is that? A little bit of history for everybody. Speaking of the T1000. So yes. So yeah, it's a bit of good old-fashioned show bag history, especially after our discussion last week. All right, everybody, now it's time to put your thinking caps on, because it's now time for this.
Useless pop of the week!
And without mucking around, I want everybody out there to tell me, what the hell is this?
I know. I saw this. It's coming out up to Halloween when everything gets decorated like Halloween, and they take anything that probably already existed and whack a new Halloween pattern on it to change it into a new version of an old pop.
Collins asked, "Where are the show bags now?" You've got them, have you? Is that right?
Yeah, they're at my place. So they're so delicate, I don't actually want people touching them. And I've had a couple of museums that are interested in buying them. So just before they go into the shop, I'm just approached a couple of different people to make sure they go to the right place.
Regarding the pop, I agree with Joe. Is there no end to the uselessness? Clearly. Guy has said, hello, I can't pronounce that character's name. Sounds like
that's a rude word, Dags.
Oh, and okay. Then, all right. Gotcha. Very good. Nightmare Before Christmas dog. I don't know, but hang on. It's the ghost dog from the Nightmare Before Christmas. Pikachu from Pokemon, Fluoro Halloween style. Well, are you all correct or not? I think the answer is no, you're not right.
Zero is the ghost dog from Halloween, but no one said it was Zero. So Zero in Nightmare Before Christmas is white. Why they would do a pattern Zero? Well, of course, to make people rebuy the same figure for like a Halloween version. But of all the versions you could do, you just redo the original version, because people are always after that classic thing. And one of the things I hate, and we've seen it with the Avengers and Star Wars and all these different things, where you take an existing character that's iconic, has a certain look, and then you muck around with it and say it's collectible because it's glow in the dark and has a stupid pattern on it. Now, this is one of those examples where, do you know what? Some people might like it because there isn't a lot of Nightmare Before Christmas figures. So they've got the set, but instead of making new figures and expanding the line, they take the old ones and repaint it. And that's just cheap, and that makes it useless.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I mean, I even had the magnifying glass of truth trying to work out what it was, and it's just like, nah, sorry, kids, not working for me at all. And I think most people watching this are all agreeing that it is complete and utter tripe. Yes, exactly right. All right, so very, very good. All right, so there's more useless pops. There's no end to the damn things. All right, so we need to move on, otherwise we'll never get the show done. There's a bit of text. People have been writing in the comments about good old Ronnie, and you wouldn't believe what's been going on in the past week. So let's just find out, shall we? All right, so we've got a lot of correspondence between Aaron and good old Ronnie. And for those who are way behind the eight ball, quite simply, Aaron's ordered this stuff over the past few months. None of it has turned up, but recently Aaron went and bought a pallet from Amazon for $67. Told Ronnie about it. Ronnie, who's the dude over in Asia, said, "Oh no, it's a scam. Don't do it. Don't do it." And so Aaron obviously decided to play up on that. So bearing in mind that there are still items that Aaron ordered from this dude that have still not turned up, okay, after all these months, despite sending payment after payment after payment. So all this is text-based, so good old Aaron's got a bit of reading ahead of him. But if you want to know what the correspondence is, it's an absolute classic. So we're kicking it all off with Aaron saying that his pallet hasn't turned up from Amazon. All right, dude, over to you.
Here we go. Hello, my friend Ronnie. I am worried. Nothing from Amazon, and the website has disappeared. It's been 2 weeks, and I don't have my Amazon pallet. Do you think I will still get my offer, or get this offer?
So what do you reckon Ronnie's going to say? Is Ronnie going to laugh in your face and say, "I told you it was a scam," or is he going to be sympathetic? Well, let's just find out, shall we?
Dear Aaron, no. I told you not to buy them. We have saying here, mentally feeble and wealth are soon divided. Your money is gone, scattered to the wind. Scammers feast on your hard-earned cash. Ronnie. That's a great one, isn't it?
I like that. So you're now mentally feeble. Is that what he's trying to tell you? So, and your hard-earned cash is, I mean, seriously? I mean, like, you got caught by scammers. Really, dude?
Do you know what's happened there, though? He's using a translation, and he's put into it, "A fool and their money is soon parted." and through a translation device, it's gone like mentally feeble idiots and their wealth is soon separated or something. And I think that's hilarious.
I love this from Rusky Babes. Yeah, it sounds better in Chinese. I totally agree with you on that one. Yes, and it has a certain poetic flair. All right, so let's go and see what Aaron had to say back to good old Ronnie.
Hi, Ronnie. I'm sure you have some Ferengi in you, because I did think that sounded like a Ferengi phrase right there. It seems okay. They have messaged me and said that the parcel they will send is so big that I will need to send more postage, but only $20. Also, because the items coming are so awesome, I may have to pay import tax. They have estimated the import tax will be less than $50. And if I send them the funds for this, they can take care of it from their end, and I won't have to deal with the tax department myself. I'm very excited. Your friend Aaron.
So the gag there, everybody, is the fact that when you ordered your small home for hobbits, which you ordered back in like March or something, good old Ronnie kept saying to you to keep sending an extra $10 to ship it out, and he contradicted himself multiple times, saying it's been sent. Then he would say, "Send more money, and we'll send it post haste." So clearly, there's a disconnect there, and you're obviously playing his role of saying, "Oh, I'm going to send more money." The Amazon saying, "Send more money, send more money," and of course, clearly, you're not doing that, right? So let's just see what Ronnie had to say about that. Did Ronnie go, "That's a great idea, send them more money," or did he get on the defensive on your behalf? What do you reckon? Bearing in mind, Ronnie's played exactly the same game as the Amazon people, right? So what do you reckon he had to say? It was this.
Aaron, no, do not send more money for postage. Do not send money for import tax. Nothing grows in the vicinity of this company because they are shady. Don't expect goods and wealth. You will get a box of disappointment. The Soul Greg King will say, "Now that's poor value," over and over, because it is a scam. If you want to send money and get some awesome items, please browse our site. I know all the scams they use. You will be big happy spending all money with our group. Please listen to me, your friend Ronnie.
Now, of course, the gag of that, for those who aren't aware of the history, is the amount of times that Aaron has bought something from Ronnie's site, and what they've sent has been completely different. Sometimes not identical, but like the wrong item compared to what was photographed on the site. And from Ronnie's perspective, he said, "Well, what the photograph is just a guide. What you get doesn't have to look like the photograph." He used the McDonald's hamburger Big Mac as a comparison, right? So the fact that he actually said that, he's actually saying what he preaches, which is kind of bizarre, even though he's saying that you shouldn't follow it. So,
yeah.
Yes, put it simply, yeah, get scammed by us, not the other guys. Absolutely fantastic. And as we've picked up before, yeah, it's definitely the pot calling the kettle black. So there you go. But so what do you reckon Aaron had to say to Ronnie in response?
But Ronnie, in February, I bought small Hobbit home, and it didn't come. I sent more money in March, April, twice in June and August, and still have no home for Hobbits. How can you say don't send more money for product from one company, yet ask me over and over again to pay extra postage and get items from you? I'm confused. Your pal, Aaron.
All right, so what do you think Ronnie had to say about that? Well, as it turned out, and I hope you can read this off the screen because there's a lot of text here, right? Ronnie kind of went off the deep end a little bit, didn't you? you finally poked the bear a bit too hard, and he kind of lost it a little bit. So, Joe, this is brilliant. You wait until you see what Ronnie had to say about that. We've just caught Ronnie out, because Aaron said he bought his small home for Hobbits. He spent all this money and he still hasn't received the damn thing. And then yet Ronnie's saying don't send money to Amazon because you won't receive the damn thing. So, all right, you reckon? Nice whack there, Aaron. So, what do you reckon Ronnie had to say? All right, there's a fair bit of text here, so off you go, dude.
Here we go. Hey, Aaron, I worked you out from when I first met you. You are too nice and trusting guy, and you buy items for your show, not because you care about them. So you get to pay, and people watch and laugh at show. That is what you pay for. Who knows where Small Home for Hobbits is? You may get it, or you may get surprise. You may get nothing. Better, you may get something to laugh at and mock. You even say that you are disappointed because the items are good. This is why you are my best top customer and friend outside sight. You don't shout at me in caps locked and demand and make me feel small. You are funny and good guy, I think. Pallet will never come. Computers and phones will never come. You get value from me because we are all joking and laughing. Even the Soul Greg King thinks I okay. See, I am more aware than you think. Your friend Ronnie.
So our first thought was to go to a place that has a big pallet, take photographs of it, send it to Ronnie and go, oh, by the way, it turned up. You wouldn't believe all the really cool shit we've got. Busted. Love
Ronnie,
it. How
Ronnie,
about that?
Ronnie's smarter than we thought.
So I like the fact that you said you may get something, may get a surprise, you may not get nothing. And it's just like the first law of ordering something on the internet is when you pay money for something, you should get your item. And clearly he's saying that might not be the case. So, oh dear. What do you reckon, dude?
He is a legend. And I just got that today. So I was saying to Dags, oh, you're never going to believe what Ronnie sent.
Unbelievable. So there you go. Very, very good. All right. So that's that's all we have for the Greg King's Cheaper Things. Excuse me. Which is particularly cool. All right, speaking of things that are particularly cool, you're not going to believe this. Not only have I got a new picture to chuck in, but I got this. So that's the second dodgiest bloody opening for a segment we've ever had. Oh, dude. So people have apparently been complaining that the Lord Vile's Vile file doesn't have its own musical intro. Now it does, so you can all get off my back. So what do you reckon they do?
Well, it is the second most dodgy musical intro we've got, isn't it? We've got a couple of the dodgy ones, but there you go. He's got his own theme tune, the Vile. I haven't seen the Vile for a while. Hope he's okay.
No, he's fine. He was setting up his mobile. He got a new phone and he couldn't work it. Maybe he got a phone from your Amazon pallet. That's the thing. Now, there's been a bit of correspondence. It's like, oh my God, there's people sending in letters everywhere to the old Vile file. And believe me, we've got something to show you tonight. It's like, it's going to, if you've had your dinner, it's going to turn your stomach, right? I showed it to my other half and she just said, she walked out and said, no, it's disgusting. But we're going to kick it off with this.
How do I dress you, Master Vile? I found these pictures and thought you would like it. Let's not try to understand their relationship. George P.
There you go. George P's joining the show. So here are the pictures. Make of this what you will.
So this is some weird mutant clown doll, and there's also a human with a trunk. And I looked this up. This is a real toy because we don't do customs on the show. We only do toys that really actually exist. But they are a set of dolls, and the trunk on the human goes into the clown's mouth like a teapot. So you can tell where we're going with the show tonight. It's starting with something super classy, and it's all downhill from here.
I tell you what, you say, oh, to be a trunk. Yeah, okay. And in fact, the doll's face looks like the Joker, doesn't it? It sounds like sort of Joker look about it. But yeah, that's just kind of bizarre.
He turns around and he says, "Why so sad?" Then sucks on his nose.
And there's a trunk goes in the mouth. Very good. All right, next letter.
Yes, so Lord Vile, supreme and mighty Sith Lord, I pledge my devotion as trusted acolyte by sending you an entire legion of my best ugly toys for your segment. My choice was Dragon Ball Z. There are many you may wish to add to your collection. Alan Cole.
Just in that previous one with the two doors, I like that. That's made Ange has made him shiver. Wait till you see what's coming up. So there you go. That's not a happy ending. Oh dear. All right. Next up, here we go.
So these are real toys. They're bootleg Dragon Ball Z toys. So they do exist, and you can find them in the cheapo shops now. All of these. Oh. Yeah, we can't put that one up.
Geez, I want to, dude. I really.
So all of these Dragon Ball Z toys look like they're the after the battle versions of the toys, not the pre-battle versions of the toys. And Alan was so nice; he sent us about 8. So he didn't give us an entire segment, but he gave us two slides. So if we go to the next one, I think there's some more bad Dragon Ball Z stuff.
Yep.
Yes. So as you can see, if you're a Dragon Ball Z collector, there are some Vile toys out there, and all of those are worthy of being on the Vile file. Thank you for making my job a little bit easier and the Vile's job a bit easier for sending them in. Anyone who finds stuff like this can send it to me at Aaron's Collectibles if you friend me directly, or Dags, or the Sci-Fi Zone.
Yeah, the comment from Jeff, I really want to, but it's to do with the trunk and the doll, and it is wrong, but oh, jeez, it's so funny. Chrissy said, we'll ever see an R-rated Vile file? Unfortunately not, because this show is recorded, and which means that anybody can watch it the very next day, including young people. You wouldn't know that we're trying to be PG rated, but we are. All right, now we got this message as well.
Dear Lord Vile, I found this super Spidey Superman ugly combination while surfing the net. It reminded me of you. Hope you can use it. That's from Scott Bradmore.
Don't know. New viewer to the
I
show.
know.
Don't know who Scott is, but welcome to the show. Here we go. Check this out.
So this is an interesting one. It's Superman, but he's got like a Spider-Man webbed suit on. And when you, I guess, push his crotch, his chest lights up like E.T. And as you can see, they've got his face looking uncannily like nothing in the Marvel or DC universe. So that's another good one for the Vile File.
I've heard rumors that your chest lights up when you get pushed in the crotch. You too can see that at Aaron's Collectables. Very, very good. All right, let's. Oh, bad Daggy. All right, let's move on. All right, here we go.
And another letter. Hi again, Lord Vile. I have watched most of your old segments and haven't seen many that focus on girls' toys. I sent a couple. Maybe you have more in the Vile archive. Lots of love, Andrea with 2 E's Smith.
Yeah, that was. Sorry, Andrea. When Aaron sent the one from last week, and I saw the 2 E's, I thought, oh, it's got to be a spelling mistake. So I actually changed the spelling back to 1 E. You must spend your whole life just correcting people. I can't imagine autocorrects wouldn't get the 2 E's right. So, so well done for having a different name. But I can imagine it would be a pain in the ass having to fill out official forms. All right. So the theme is the Vile dolls and girls' toys. So, okay, girls, if you're watching the show, now Christy's watching it at the moment and all the rest of it. So, if you're a person who has girlfriends or daughters or whatever, maybe some of these dolls might be the go for Christmas. What do you reckon, there, Mr. Aaron?
So these are the ones that Andrea brought in, sent in. That's the one on the left is interesting because it's obviously a good-looking doll, but it looks bad because one of the eyes is broken, so it's got an open eye. Yes, an open eye and a closed eye, so it does look a bit weird. The middle one there is a unicorn's horn for little girls, and we won't really say anything else about that. And then the end there, you've got fairy, what is it, putty. But basically, you've got a fairy there with the putty that you use inside the thing coming out of her nether regions.
What is the deal with that? I didn't know that before. You're right. So you got, for those who can't tell, this purple thing, whatever that is, and his nose is actually stuck up her bum. It's like, what is the deal with that?
I don't know.
Seriously.
Probably something from the reject shop.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. Yeah, and that looks standard bad quality girls crap. Oh, it's only going to get worse from here because we're going to violate some dolls. So let's get right into it.
Of course, the Vile has dredged into his actual personal collection and has said, Andrea, thank you for showing me, but we're going up to the next level. So we're looking at scary.
We're looking at.
So these are all real dolls that are available for your kids if you want to mentally scar them, I guess. So you've got a baby doll here, but I guess it's not your standard baby doll because it's
That's a total recall reference for those out there. Quite open your mind. Here, go on, keep going, dude.
I was actually going to say, you could actually buy that and use it as a cosplay for Total Recall. You could have it hanging out of your shirt or something, which would be pretty cool. But these are real toys you can get. You can get the cute little cherub-looking babies, but you can also get the crying ones, which, babies do sometimes. But these are particularly nightmarish. Would you like a collection of these, Dags?
I actually had something to eat today when these slides turned up, and this particular one actually made me feel a bit off. And I actually showed this picture to my other half, and she said, "No, I don't want to look at that." And I agree with Kelvin; it is horrendous. There's nothing wrong with it. I totally agree with you on that one. There we go. There was a little girl out there who loves her beautiful baby. I guess there is too. So, indeedy doody didy. But no, I can't imagine that'd be on the Christmas list for a lot of people.
Now, here's another set of really weird dolls. And the one on the left is the weirdest for me because it's got all these, I guess, little holes where you can put attachments or suction-looking system on it. I don't know if that's to do with the play, what you have with the doll or what it does. But it is just one of those weird things. Or it's got boils or something disgusting on it. The one in the middle there is, again, they've probably tried to make it look realistic, but it's a cross between a Poggle or from the Dark Crystal and a real baby or something. And then the one on the right there, again, whenever you try to do a realistic facial yawn or something like that, sometimes if it doesn't work properly, it looks just wrong. So all of these are ones that would be buried at the bottom of any girl's toy box, I would think.
Oh dear, I agree with you, Guy. Not commenting on these ones at all, and that one on the left, that is just a kind of a tad weird. Because the middle one looks like a Star Trek alien. Oh, I suppose it does, doesn't it? So, yeah. William said it looks like a medical doll. Yeah, maybe it is, but either way, it's not exactly all that appealing, is it? But these must be appealing.
So that's what William calls them, medical dolls. So these are some old-timey dolls. Again, some of the old stuff is pretty creepy as well. I don't know, like, if you'd want any of these in a doll collection sitting on your cupboard staring at you, because all of them have those "I want to kill you" eyes, and I'm sure pretty much at least 2 out of the 3 of them come alive at night and run around and scamper around and make little laughing sounds and stuff like that. All of that stuff you could not put in a kid's room. No wonder so many kids in the past grew up totally screwed after having creepy little dolls like that as their toy.
Joe's already said he's not sleeping tonight. The one on the right-hand side looked at the doll from about 3 slides back, and I can understand I'd have that reaction too. So, but yeah, you sort of forget the eyes used to open when you used to lift them up, and that was considered a really cool thing. But yeah, not at all appealing. But there you go. I love the one on the right-hand side. What's the deal with that, dude?
The right hand side on this is called a switch around doll, and of course it wouldn't be politically correct now, but if you wanted a little black baby, you could put the dress down one side, and then if you got tired of it, you could turn it upside down and pull the dress up, and it'd turn into a little white baby. So you could have twice the play with the one doll. The middle one there is a real Barbie, and apparently it's just because the girl has played with it and taken the clothes off and messed the hair. It kind of looks like Barbie after a bad night out. But that is another like taken makeup tips from the Joker there. Why so serious? And then the one on the end is, again, it's obviously a toy that's been made and it just hasn't come out right. So you've got a bit of a dumpy, frumpy, weird-looking doll. So the Vial has got a fantastic doll collection, and we're happy that he was able to share some of these amazing dolls with us tonight.
So what are you trying to tell? Oh, God, that's I hate that head. So what are you trying to tell me about the doll collection that the Vial's got there, Mr. Aaron?
I'm just saying, if you took a picture of that and sent it to all your friends, half of them would take you off the friends list.
Friends than Barbie.
Yeah,
keep going.
Yep. So the Vial has these in his collection, and we know that anything in the Vial's collection has been categorized and shared with us and has been well and truly violated.
Absolutely fantastic. Phil, you've summed it up, mate. You're freaking me out. I tell you what. And the thing is, they're real products. That's the thing about it. How freaky is that?
I know.
Unbelievable. Oh, dear. Very, very good. All right, so this is what we're going to do. So it's now 9 o'clock. So what we're going to do is we're going to jump into our presentation, and then if we get time at the end, we'll come back and we'll do our eBay section, which got carried over from last week. So you okay with that, dude?
Absolutely.
Yeah, cool. Otherwise, we'll be here to all hours of the night. And hang on, for something I forgot to do. So just talk amongst yourselves for un momento while I call up something, which is particularly important. So hope we're having a good time out there. Don't forget to ensure that you, get your umbrellas and stuff. Commercial time. So before I forget, okay, very, very important. This is actually a bit of a big deal. We discussed it last week. We bring it up this week. But of course, tomorrow night is the premiere of the brand new series. I forgot to mention is we only got 6 episodes of this. We're going to give it a trial for 6 episodes of the Who Report. And it's premiering tomorrow on this channel at 8 o'clock. Anything you want to say about the Who Report, Mr. Aaron?
So we've been working on it. It's me and Greg King are going to host it for a couple of weeks and see how it goes. It's brought to you, sponsored by Peter Davison, not the actual Peter Davison, but a namesake. and it has inspired me to dig into my Twitter account for the first time in years and years and years, and now I'm trying to set that up and give it a new background and all of that. So when all of the socials are up and ready, we'll share all of that, but hopefully everyone will be following that. And I know there's a few of us who are Doctor Who fans. Dags has given me the thumbs up, which really means wind it up. I have to say what someone came into the shop today and said. They asked me, is this going to be a Doctor Who series or a Docky Who series? Because I'm up for Docky Who, but not really Doctor Who. And I'm like, no, it is a Doctor Who series.
Love it. How about that? The old Docky Who. You can credit that to me. So very, very good. Phil, who's the president of the Doctor Who Club of Victoria. Yes, it's definitely right up your alley. So be sure to check it out. I like it. Smash the like button and subscribe. Absolutely fantastic. So, as we said, there are only 6 episodes, and we do have to thank Peter Davidson, who's sponsoring the show for us. And good to see how it goes. It'd be good to see the old, the soul Greg King back on the airwaves again and talking about something that he absolutely loves and enjoys. So, it should be good fun, Mr. Aaron. What do you reckon?
Be here tomorrow night. It's like rip it off the card, but 100% Doctor Who.
Exactly right. Very, very cool. All right, before we move on to our presentation, don't forget, as always, if you haven't done so already, be sure to check out the social. If you're going to like and subscribe something, go to the old Sci-Fi Zone sort of YouTube section, and you've got Instagrams and Twitters and all the rest of it. Make sure you go and check all that out, because we've got this show, we've got the show on Monday night, and then, of course, we've got the one tomorrow night. So there's stuff coming out everywhere. You don't want to miss out what's going on. And for those who don't know, Mr. Aaron does have his own store, so be sure to check it out in Blackburn. So if you want to see the Docky Who report tomorrow and then talk about it with him in the next couple of days after that, that's where he'll be. So it's a very, very exciting stuff. What do you reckon, Mr. Aaron?
Although we're pretty busy at the moment, I've had the busiest couple of weeks I've ever had. And this kind of all runs into our main feature, doesn't it, Dags? Because we've got an interesting one tonight, one that we haven't really done before.
Exactly right. How much Docky? It's not. It's DOCKY. If you write it like that, it's Dossy. So somebody, yeah. And William double K. I invented the damn word. It's DOCKY. Everybody, so there you go.
Yeah. All these cheap, inferior knockoffs of your original knockoff.
Yeah, I know, you're sort of bastardizing my bastardization. So there you go. All right, so we're going to have a yap on about our feature presentation. It's going to be a very interesting sort of discussion tonight, actually, because we're effectively breaking up into 2 bits. The second bit is actually to deal with hoarding and collecting and hoarding. And Aaron's got a bit of a story to tell about that. We mentioned it earlier on about visiting a deceased estate. And just quickly, you mentioned that the person, actually, I don't think you did mention it. You mentioned that the deceased estate's, the person was a hoarder. Is that right?
Absolutely. So we're going to look tonight at the line between collecting and hoarding, and where that line is blurred, and what is a collector and what is a hoarder. Now, I think everyone does kind of know the answer. So we're going to have a bit of fun with it, but we're also going to be showing some stuff that absolutely blew my mind and is pretty amazing. But I think we're going to start off with looking at collectors.
So, so the hoarding thing we're going to cover off a bit later on in detail, because as Aaron said, he went to the deceased estate, and there's a bit of a story to be told. But one of the things that it sort of made us think about is whether a collection be too big. Now, I've deliberately used the picture there that was my Batman collection, saying clearly a dozen items is not too big, right? So I've done that as a bit of a joke. But what I've done is I've just had a bit of a flick through the internet. Now, of course, we know a lot of people with gigantic collections of this and gigantic collections of that. And sometimes you can look at them and go, okay, is that a bit too obsessive? Is that a bit too much? And I've stayed away from certain things and I've focused on unusual things. So just to be clear about this, we all know that the world's biggest Star Wars collection is with Steve Sansweet in America, Rancho Obi-Wan, right? That's a no-brainer. He's been the biggest collector in the world for decades. And he's got a lot of stuff. It's in a converted chook house, which is particularly cool. But then you start thinking about the other collections that people have. And some of them are in the Guinness Book of World Records. Now, I know the world's biggest Batman collector lives in Atlanta in America. The world's biggest computer game collector is just actually in Melbourne. It's not that far away. So let's look at some unusual things that people collect. And you go, these are pop culture, not all of them anyway, and go, all right, when is there too much? Is there a point when you go, okay, this is just getting a little bit large? And is it getting bordering on the side of obsessive? So in no particular order, and Aaron hasn't seen these pictures, so I'm just going to bring them up. We'll have a bit of a quick chat about them. This one, Ange will like. It's the world like a Coca-Cola can collection, and I mean, all collections are excellent and they're fantastic and all the rest of it. But you reckon something like this is probably just pushing a bit too hard? What do you think?
It is one of those things where I know collectors don't understand why I would collect Doctor Who, and I can appreciate other people's collections, but I sometimes don't understand why they collect what they do because it doesn't have that kind of appeal to me. Usually, I find anything that's displayed nicely and is organized and behind glass, it looks good no matter what it is because you can see the care that the person has put into it. But when it hits to the point where it's going through rooms and getting out of control, it might not be hoarding, but it doesn't look like the best collection. That is too in your face for me as a nice collection.
It's an interesting point, isn't it? Because it is a fine line. And one of the things that a lot of collectors have, and I know you've had this problem, and I did for a period of time, is you got all this stuff and you got nowhere to put it. And it stays in boxes and it gets buried in different bedrooms and all the rest of it. And where we cross the line to the hoarding scenario is where you start piling things up to the roof and you've got to put like walkways in the room so you can actually get from one room to the other room and all the rest of it. And then it becomes a health hazard, becomes a big issue. And of course, that's what we're going to cover off with your talk later on. But I agree with you. There are points when you go, okay, that is a bit much. If you took one can out, suddenly is that big like, oh, that's, my God, the collection's not complete, or is this person still looking for extra cans? And that's just one example. This one come up and I go, yeah, righto. So it's the Guinness Book of World Records of Winnie the Poohs, right? And there would be a lot more beyond this picture. And I go, that's kind of nuts.
Well, when you walk through that house, you have to be careful you don't step in any poo.
Yeah, I know there's some good jokes that come out of that, eh? Yeah.
Yeah, it is another one of those things where I could see right through the spectrum of some people who are into Disney memorabilia and Winnie the Pooh stuff, thinking that is the most awesome picture and they would love their house to look like that. Where there are some people who would go, that is an absolute nightmare and all of it needs to be donated to the Brotherhood of St. Lawrence.
And you know what? It comes under the heading. It's each to their own. And you are right. I mean, it does. You do have that issue of saying, oh, am I impressed? Am I like, wow, that is really cool? Or is this like, oh, that's just too much? I showed these photographs to Lynn, my other half, today. And even she looked at that and goes, oh, geez, that's just way too much. Now, clearly they've set it up for the photo. But you do wonder where the line is crossed over. Sorry, go.
I do find with collections of stuff that I'm not so interested in myself, a well-created, curated collection is better than a mass of just so much that it's overwhelming. I have seen stuff that I don't collect myself, and it has been so well displayed and so nicely contained that I go, oh, do you know what? I wouldn't mind that in my house. But something like a whole room of plush Winnie the Poohs, destroy it with fire for me.
Yes, and Colin, you are right. It's each to their own, right? And we're not being critical of this by any stretch, you know. And there's a lot of things that people collect out there, and it's just sort of looking at who has what, how much have they got, how have they displayed it, and whether it's the kind of thing where you go, oh, I'm really impressed, or I go, oh my God, that's just too extreme, regardless of what the topic is, right? And there are some really unusual ones coming up. We discussed this a couple of months ago about whether somebody would have been collecting this particular thing, and apparently there is McDonald's stuff. So. But yeah, looks like a bit of time and effort's been put into how it's been put together.
McDonald's stuff is interesting. A few years ago, I went out and I looked at a collection. Someone rang me and they said their garage was full of toys. It was another deceased estate. And I said, what kind of toys are there? And they're like, oh, there's Transformers and there's Barbies and there's Pokemon. There's all this stuff. And I go, oh, this sounds absolutely fantastic. And I went out and it was all Happy Meal toys. And I said, oh, I'm not interested in buying it. That's all. 90% of it is $2 bin stuff for me. That said, if I have seen some amazing McDonald's memorabilia display, but that one doesn't do anything for me. It just looks like McDonald's has taken over the house. When you get, and you might understand this, Dags, when you get someone who's decided to collect every Batman Happy Meal and they might have a bookshelf full of it, that looks pretty cool. But when people say, I'm going to collect everything McDonald's, that really doesn't do it for me. I can understand that there is a link and people grew up with McDonald's, so they might want to collect it, but again, that's not doing anything for me personally.
Yeah, I would agree with you. Joe's said there's a difference between a collection and an accumulation. That's an interesting, and I'm going to bring that up in a couple of minutes' time because there's one that I have a picture of and I go, all right, I can see where they kind of went off the rails a little bit. Now, this one is absolutely mind-blowing. This one is a pop culture one, and you look at this and you go, holy shit, it's a Transformers collection. Look at that. Freaking hell. That must have spent hours setting this up for the photograph. That's just nuts, isn't it?
That's impressive. And do you know why that's impressive? And why is this impressive for you too, Dags? Because you've put Transformers in our cabinet. And you know how you walk away from that cabinet and half of them will fall over if you haven't done it right. So I look at that, and where the Winnie the Pooh, I'm like, oh, that's too much for me. I'm like, I'm impressed that they took the time to get that picture ready. I don't know how long that would have taken, but I reckon days. But that's an awesome Transformers collection, that's for sure.
That's scary. And I would argue that's probably a little bit too much. But I mean, it's the guy's passion and good on him and all the rest of it. But it's like, holy shit, man. And I don't know where it gets displayed normally. Clearly, it wouldn't look like this. But I mean, I think he took this for the Guinness Book of Records photo. But
here's a laugh.
Is nuts. Hey?
Here's a laugh. If you're the photographer, you take a couple of photos and then you go to him. Do you know what? They'd all look better in vehicle mode. Can you just transform?
Yeah, that way. That really was more than meets the eye. I like that one. It's not a Transformer collection. It's Cybertron. Totally insane, isn't it? Now, you're talking about displays earlier, and I agree with you. Some of the really big collections, when they're displayed properly, you can really dial into it and go, you know what, that is, it's pushing my buttons, especially behind glass cabinets. And even though the topic of this does nothing for me whatsoever, I can appreciate the way it's been displayed. And it's Sonic the Hedgehog.
Yes, and instantly, again, I can see why, because the displays, the cabinets are customized and they're in blue and yellow, which is, of course, Sonic colors. Looks really amazing. And it doesn't look like it's something that's taken over the house. It looks like it's a nice display in a collection room that you could probably say to your friends, I bet you didn't know I collected Sonic. Come and have a look at this. And they are not going to go in there and be disgusted. They're going to actually probably be impressed. And I think that's when you've done a good thing with a display. Like you said, you can see that and appreciate it. And that's when you're displaying it at the right level.
Yep, totally agree. So, yeah, clearly there's been a lot of time and effort. I do like the fact that the color scheme matches the character, which is kind of cool. Now, here's this one, hot sauces. I want to taste that one. That's just, it's like, that's a bit much, isn't
it? It is. I mean, I guess. I've never, that's what, for those that who are watching, I haven't seen any of the ones that Dags chose. He surprised me tonight, and he just said, I'll just give us your reaction. That was not like anything I've seen before. I guess if you were Master Chef level, that's fantastic. You can really see how huge that is by looking at the kitchen bench down the front there. Because I thought it was big, and then I see the kitchen bench and I'm like, oh no, that's 3 stories high at that high point kind of thing.
Yeah, they've clearly said, oh, we've got the cathedral roof, and we've thought, oh, we've run out of space. Oh, we'll just build it right up here and all this sort of thing. It's like, and they had to leave a just really a gap for the air conditioning vent. Yeah. It's just, who would have thought? That's the thing. You look up big collection, and there's a lot, right? I've only just picked out a handful, right? But there are a lot, and you go, who would have thought anybody would collect this in the first place? And unbelievable. Yeah, which is very, very cool. Chrissy said, come and see my collection. I watch people's faces. They decided to start running. Yeah, exactly right. This one I looked at and I go, oh, I'm sure there'd be big ones out there, but garden gnomes. At least their heads are all intact, but it's each of their own. What do you reckon?
I have a funny story about garden gnomes. I'll keep it quick. I was reading a magazine once that, well, it was a woman's magazine like Cleo or something like that a friend showed me, and one of the letters was, I had a relationship with a guy. It was all going really well, and then I brought him home and he never came back again. And the only thing I can think of, I have 200 garden gnomes. Would it be something like that? And the editor turned around and goes, oh, yes, that's terrible. Imagine this. You went to his house and it was full of Star Wars toys. It would be the same kind of reaction. And I thought, well, that's a pretty low blow. Gnomes and garden and Star Wars toys are totally different things.
Yeah, it's... I don't know. It's a very tough one. And we have discussed this in another show about if you have the prospective other, whether it be male, female, whatever, right? And you bring them to your house for the first time and you show them what your interests are without them knowing beforehand what it is, how are they going to react? And depending on what it is, some people may look at, if you've got a collection of pop culture things and they might say, yeah, haven't you grown up yet? You're still a child. Where other people may really dial into it and go, oh, that's really, really cool. I agree with you. The scale of it, how much you've got and how it's displayed is critical. If it's just everywhere, people
Yeah.
get turned off. But if it's a bit of time and effort, like we saw with the Sonic the Hedgehog thing, a person may say, "Oh, look, I don't get it, I don't understand it, but I accept it. It's all
Yeah.
good." And I think there's a fair bit to be said about that. So, yeah, as a guess, but who knows? We were talking about space issues earlier, and of course, everything we've looked at so far just exists inside houses, inside bedrooms, and glass cabinets, all the rest of it. What happens if you say, "My collection, a room or a house, just isn't going to cut the mustard"? And of course, we're talking about car collections, real ones, right? Now, the fact that you can't open any of the doors to get into any of them. There's a lot of money poured into this. This is something where you need a shitload of space to be able to display this stuff. And I've known a couple of car collectors in my time, and no garage is big enough. What's his name? Jay Leno. He has an
Jay
enormous
Leno.
collection of cars, 200
Yeah.
and something plus. So
I think
it's the kind of thing where it's not for the faint-hearted or the person with a shortage of space. What do you reckon?
Jerry Seinfeld collects cars as well. The one I look at that is they look really nice and polished, but it looks really so close. How would you go in there and clean the dust off of those and keep them in nice condition? Do you know what? If I had enough money to collect cars, I still probably wouldn't. They wouldn't be my thing. But I'd probably collect something like pinball machines. That would be awesome. It's just cars don't do it for me as much as they do for some people. You are more of a car connoisseur, Dags. What do you think?
Oh yeah, I love it. I mean, I got a lot of respect for car collectors because they take up so much space. You never use them, and as you said, I mean, like Jay Leno, I believe has people who actually he pays people to clean his cars for him, and he would drive for his show a different car every day on the way to the show. So at least he would use his. You know, they might get used once every couple of years, but at least he would use them. So I always thought that was really really cool. But yeah, it's the kind of thing you say. I live in a flat, and I'm going to start collecting cars. Yeah, it's a bit of a tricky one. Rusky Babes has said, I think it's a collection when it's arranged nicely on shelves, etc., and it looks like something that should be in a museum. It's a fair call, but when it looks like something is piled up from a dumpster, then it's hoarding. We're going to get into the hoarding thing a bit later on because we are going to show an example of people who bought things and just hoarded them, but we won't jump to that point just yet. And I'll get to the other comment in a second. This one, I never got this, right? And there's a big sort of like a lot of people out there who really got into this stuff, and of course it's teaspoons. And these do nothing for me, regardless of how they're displayed. But how did you find teaspoons, man? If you saw a big collection of those,
I think at one point I had a Doctor Who teaspoon because it was Doctor Who, not because it a Sonic Spork actually, not because it's a teaspoon. It is from an older generation though. It used to be when you'd go away, you could collect a teaspoon from various places as a keepsake.
Yeah.
And I remember growing up, you'd go to Phillip Island and they were in the gift shops there. But I do think it's a sort of previous generation thing because you don't see it as much now. I don't think many people collect that kind of thing anymore.
Yeah, I agree. It's definitely a memento thing from where you used to travel to different places. And I agree with Gavin here. If you had pop culture cars, then it's a different thing. You know, the Bond car, Mr. Bean, Batmobile, Autobots, and whatever. So I reckon that's pretty cool. Now, what you were discussing a few moments ago about collections that you go, okay, if they're all displayed and all that, it can look really, really groovy. Now, I don't know if this has been set up for the photo or it just looks like this normally, but get a load of this one. Squishmallows. Doesn't that look like they're invading the place?
Well, that is almost getting to the hoarding level. I would think it's when it gets to the point, unless they've been set up for the photo, if they're there permanently, you can't use that room anymore. You can't get to the windows, can't get to I think there's a TV up on the wall there or something. But, you know, it is one of those things where I just think if you've got something in a room, you have to practically still be able to use the room and walk around and use it. When it gets like that, that's more of an issue where it's getting close to hoarding.
I like this one. That's not a collection. That's an infestation. It does look a bit that way, doesn't it? Eh? So there you go. And of course, this is what I wanted to bring up from earlier on. So this is a Pokemon collection. I believe this person's got the largest one, right?
Yeah.
The thing I find that if you've got a collection of things, but all the items are different, like the Coke can thing we saw earlier, all the cans were designed differently, even though the physical shape is the same. But if you've got 600 friggin' Pokemons and they're exactly the same character, and you just bought multiples of them, like these guys here, which I think they are, could be wrong. That I think is a bit nuts. I've got 100 Pikachus, is that what the character's called? But they're all identical. That I don't get. So,
but you've got to catch them all.
Yeah, well, that's what the gag is. Pick a puke. So how do you find? Because I know you're not into Pokemon, but I know Kale is. But how do you find? Does this sort of thing work for you or not?
No, I think, again, it's one of those things you're probably better off getting, 20 or 30 different ones that look really
Yeah.
amazingly nice rather than going for the overload. How would you get 20 Pokemon on a bus? Oh, no, I've ruined the joke. How'd you get 20 Pikachus on a bus?
I don't know.
Your Pokemon.
You're an idiot. But yeah, I looked at that and I thought I can see quantity, but I couldn't see the quality. And if you've got multiples of exactly the same thing, that doesn't work for me at all. Now, we're talking about collections when they invade houses, right? And they go, okay, it started off here and it sort of just grew and grew and took over rooms and all the rest of it, despite the fact it's all on display. Clearly, this is a very common thing over in England, is the British monarchy sort of collectors, the stuff that's just everywhere. And I don't know. I think I would argue there's actually too much here, and that you couldn't even respect it even if you wanted to, because it's just overwhelming. Is that what you were saying earlier?
Yeah, it is. It is one of those collectibles where it gets to the point, if you could contain that nicely. I mean, if you had a nice British pub and behind the bar or something there was a couple of glass cabinets and it was full of that stuff, it'd probably fit quite nicely, and people who didn't collect that kind of thing might take photos of it and admire it. But when it gets to the point where it's decking out a house, the only people interested are the Guinness Book of Records, not your neighbours. So it is one of those things, if you have a passion for something and you can collect it, good for you, but there are different levels of other people's interest in it. And I would say that's one of those things where it's maybe a bit over the top.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's actually gotten too big, and I think that's definitely an argument for that. And there's a very good comment here from Rusky Babes, and this is an interesting sort of way of looking at it. You are better off with 10 $100 collectibles than 500 $2 collectibles, and I
Yeah.
can agree with that, because I went with the latter. I did the 500 $2 collectibles option. I went for the quantity rather than the quality when I came to buying stuff, and I acknowledge that was the wrong way of going about it, mainly because I couldn't afford the expensive stuff. From your perspective, you try to, I mean, do you find that, like with your Doctor Who collection, do you find that you've got a mixture of both, or is it just like, is the quality there and the quantity?
What I find is Doctor Who's an interesting one, because originally when it was on from 63 to 89, there wasn't a ton of collectibles. So by the time I was getting it, the stuff from the 60s, even the cheap stuff, was rare. So I'd already had that kind of mystique to it, because it was a cheap toy, but it was already expensive. With the new series, when I tried to collect everything, it was the same thing as you. After a while, a couple of years, I'm like, do you know what? I don't need the sticker books. I don't need the chocolate giveaway things and things like that, because it actually cheapens the collection I already have. And I thought it was interesting when Joe mentioned earlier, there's a difference between collecting and accumulating. And I felt like I was accumulating because I was getting stuff that I didn't necessarily think was fantastic. So I kind of put a line in the sand and said, you know what? I'll get a couple of the really nice modern series pieces, but not everything, and I'll just concentrate on everything from the original series. And I think that's the difference with some collectors. They can put the brakes on it, and some collectors just can't.
Totally agree with you on that one. This one, you're talking about displays earlier, and it's like, once again, the actual topic is kind of really like, who would have thought of that? But it looks good, and of course, it's oil cans. So how's that?
Auto memorabilia is an absolutely huge
Mm,
area of collectibles. It's not something that we deal with, but old signs from petrol stations, old
yeah.
tins, old displays, all of that. There is a huge demand for it, and it comes off people who do want to collect one of every kind of oil can, or they just want to get every golden fleece one that they can find. And then there are other people that have a bar, and this kind of
Mm,
stuff goes well as a small display on someone's man cave or bar or something like that. If they get an old sign, and some people even get the old Bowsers, or they get some old
yep.
oil cans, it is more of a designer thing than a collection. This is obviously a collection, and the person has put a lot of work into
Mm,
getting different versions and different sizes. But I don't mind auto memorabilia. And I tell you what, there's a lot of area in there. If you put a couple of cars in there and they were supporting the
mm.
car collection, that's an awesome way to house a car collection as well, isn't it?
Yep, totally agree. And Rusky Babes has made a saying, if he was doing it, he'd go for the expensive stuff, not the $2 a shop. And I would too. In hindsight, I would, focus on the quality
Yeah.
rather than the quantity. But I found in my time, whenever people came and paid you a visit, they always wanted to see what you had new. And so psychologically going, well, I've bought all this extra stuff. Last week there was 20, now there's 40, even if the extra 20 is just rubbish. But people
Yeah.
just see number. They just look at the whole thing as a big holistic amount. not realizing that most of it's all rubbish. And that was what I focused on. And in hindsight, that was the wrong way of going about it. But at the time, who knew? So now you're just saying about how, like with the oil can thing, is also displayed correctly, beautifully, whatever. And this is where you go, all right, if you walk into this room, you'd be going, oh, geez, mate, what's the deal with that? Beer mugs. It's got them on the roof and everything.
Well, it is one of those things, isn't it, that people collect. I think it's getting away from popular culture where you're collecting beer mugs. So it is one of those things where I guess the remit of the show is to cover anything that's collectible. If someone collects beer mugs or barbed wire or the stickers off fruit, we will show it, but it isn't one that is in my wheelhouse or I would particularly collect.
I was just looking for the point of view, stuck them all over the ceiling, right? So it's just
everywhere.
everywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. Ceiling is fair game when it comes to displaying collectibles.
Tell you what, there'd be a lot of weight on that ceiling, that's for sure. But how nuts is that? But yeah, that's very, very cool. Back scratches. And I didn't realize it, but he's got them in this thing back here as well. So each their own on that one. So I didn't see that one coming. You can almost guarantee you'd be in a league of one when it came to that. But I don't know how you would display back scratches and have people go, oh, dude, that is just grouse. What do you reckon?
I don't know. It's one of those things where it probably started as a joke, and a couple of his friends then found it funny, and because of that, he probably started collecting more and more. It gets to the point where now it doesn't impress his friends, and no one finds it funny.
Yeah, I kind of don't get it myself. I found this funny. It was Dalmatian stuff, but nothing to do with the dogs. It was just merchandise for the dogs. And I thought, mate, you can play a lot of fun, a lot of hours joining the dots in this particular collection. But look at that. It's absolutely everywhere. I mean, this is probably a specialized room that she's got. But that'd just screw your eyes up, wouldn't it?
It really would. I think you're right. It's probably just a specialized room of 101 Dalmatians or Dalmatian dog stuff, but maybe it's not the most dynamic thing to collect when it's just black with white spots everywhere.
I'll tell you what, it's just completely bizarre, isn't it? And I love this one, the do not disturb hotel signs. What the hell? How do you display that? How many doorknobs do you need, dude?
I don't know, but here's a pro tip: where in your hotel, when you're checking out and you're walking down, just turn all the ones that say "Do not disturb" round, just for some extra fun down the track.
Please clean my room. Absolutely love it. But I looked at that and I thought, yeah, okay, I don't know how you display that. I don't know how people. Yeah, the thing is, that dude would say, oh, I found this one in Uzbekistan. This one came over from Morocco. This one's from New York. And people go, bloody, whatever.
People have been known to clean out hotel rooms of the little bottles of shampoo and the soap and everything, but he's the guy that takes the do not disturb signs.
Yeah, exactly right. And I need you to move to your right. You're moving off the frame. Thank you, sir.
Sorry.
And of course, we have heard of these ones before. And I must admit, the number just doesn't register. But at least they don't take up much space. And of course, it's used bread tags. And someone's stuck on what looks like the cupboard there. That's beyond me. But it doesn't take up much room. But there will be intrinsically no value for these, I would assume. So,
and it spells bread, which is amazing.
Oh, it does too. I didn't even realize. I was looking at it, why have they shaped them like that? But yeah. And there's probably more than that too that they've got stashed away. But I don't know. That's a weird one, that one.
That's one of those things where they've now changed the bread tags to cardboard so they won't last as long. And it is up there, I guess, with collecting the fruit signs. But, you'd have to, do a lot of different bread brands to get the different tags, because most of the time it's the same tag every time you buy it. So to get all of those, they probably ate some really disgusting gluten-free stuff and some of the other like old grain breads and stuff like that.
Yeah, I guess it would start off, they'd be local, and then they'd start sending off overseas. Can you send me a bread tag thing from some other country and all the rest of it? But I find that's the kind of collection even nobody, except for them, would be going, wow, that's awesome. I think for most people go, that's just kind of weird. And there's actually a very fine line between stuff that impresses people and stuff that people just find weird and bizarre. And I guess you're right. Like the back scratching thing, I can't imagine a lot of people saying that's great. Whereas the cars, people go, I get it. So anyway, it was an interesting sort of just a range of various things about the whole thing of collections getting too large. And there could be people out there, and there probably is, who say, well, as of today, I'm going to start collecting, I'm going to use this as an example, right? Magnifying glasses, right? For the sole purpose of getting as many as I physically can so I can put myself in the Guinness Book of World Records. But to do that, I don't need 50 or 100. I need 20,000 of these things, right? And you run out and you buy 20,000 magnifying glasses, even though you don't want them and even though you don't like them. just so you can say, oh, I've got the biggest collection of magnifying glasses. And it wouldn't surprise me if in some of these cases, with some of these collections, that's how things have sort of transpired. What are your thoughts?
That'd be fantastic. Imagine how fast you could start a fire with the sun. But yeah, I think it's one of those things. Everyone we've looked at, I wouldn't say was a hoarder. I would say some of them are big collections that are getting out of control, but I wouldn't say they are hoarding stuff. I would say they are collecting with a deliberate goal. And there's a bit of a difference between collecting and hoarding.
Which leads us directly into the topic that we're going to discuss this evening. Now, this is something that you want to cover off. So there's a bit of a story here. So away you go.
It's one of those things. A lot of people know that I have a shop and we are a secondhand shop and we buy and sell stuff. And occasionally we go and look at deceased estates. And I have to say, the deceased estate that I am dealing with and cleaning at the moment is the ultimate in hoarding deceased estates I have ever seen. In 30 years of dealing in this, it is the worst one, as in the dirtiest, the weirdest stories, the most unbelievable amount of material. And to give some background, last Thursday I got a call saying there was a deceased estate. It was very close. It's just in Camberwell. It was from someone I knew, but it wasn't a relative. It was just, can you come out and look at this? There might be some stuff there that you like. To give you an idea of how much material there was here, before I came and looked at it.
Yes, it was.
Yeah. Before I came and looked at it, they had 2 months ago, when the person was still alive, tried to clean it up a bit. They had got hard waste specialists to come round and release and removed 27 tons of junk. And they said they had garbage trucks lined up down the street, and basically a team of people were coming in and out with bins full of junk, putting it into the garbage, crushing it, putting it in, crushing it, putting it in, crushing it up. The truck would be full and the one moved off and the next one came, and they did that. And I said, how do you know it was 27 tons? And they said, that's what they charged us as the amount of junk they took away at the end of it. So that's officially how much they said that was taken away. That was just to get into the house, because apparently, and I saw a photo, so I know it's true, he had in every single room junk up to about head high. And you couldn't get into any of the rooms because it had been systematically filled with, obviously he didn't think it was junk, but just everything. And they had to do that because apparently the guy was sleeping on newspapers and blankets in the corridors of his house because he couldn't get into any of the rooms anymore. So we are talking the worst level of hoarding, which obviously has some mental issues too when you are living like that for the sake of your collection. That said, they said when they got rid of the hard rubbish, that they took the best stuff as they were cleaning it and putting it in tubs and putting it in the garage. So they got me to come out and look at the garage, which had about 80 tubs full of toys and magazines and all these other bits and pieces. And so that was great. There was nothing really amazing in the tubs. It was good, solid sort of collectibles, but it was nothing, super valuable. And they said, come and have a look through the house. And when I went through the house, what was left after they'd taken out all of the rubbish was still a house full of stuff, and it was better stuff in the house than was in the garage. So I don't know what got thrown out when they did that. But the thing that's really interesting about this one is it is the biggest collection I have ever seen of domestic home videos, betas, VHS, going right back to the 70s. And he has not hundreds of tapes or thousands of tapes, but probably tens of thousands of tapes that were recorded off air. And because of this, and because I'm aware of missing material and what is rare with television and how much doesn't exist in the Australian archives, I actually contacted the Australian National Archives and the Australian Film and Sound Archives, and I actually had people come out and go through the house with me, and they actually said it was the biggest collection of audio-visual material they'd ever seen in a domestic house. And over the last week, which is one of the reasons I've been so busy, we've been organising that not to be broken up and be kept as a collection, and it's actually going to be taken up to Canberra, and they're actually going to go through it to see what is there, because they said with that much recorded material, there will definitely be missing stuff. Now, we're not talking about missing episodes of Doctor Who, unfortunately, because it was all taped off of air. but they're talking about adverts and continuities and trailers and things like that, which are historically important, but not in everyone's I have to see list. But this is the first time I've really been in the position where I've said, wow, this collection needs to be saved, and there's rare and historic stuff here. And I've been talking to people all over Australia and actually all around the world as well who've been interested in this. So this is the first that anyone's heard about this, because myself and Chad and Dags, we've been working on clearing this house for about the last, week.
You said, wow. Rusky Babes actually echoed what you just said. Wow. Pretty funny you made a mention about saying it's got Andrew, because he was a pop culture enthusiast, this person. So yeah,
So that's the fantastic thing. This guy was a sci-fi fan, and he has the oldest recordings I've ever come across. They're actually on pneumatic tapes, some of them, which is pre-beta and VHS and goes back into the 70s. So there is a chance that there could be stuff on these tapes that is missing, but it is going to take literally years. I talked to a couple of people as in, what am I going to do? And they said, I'll bring the tapes around to my place. I'll go through it. And I'm like, you do not understand the amount of tapes you are looking at. I have a big DVD collection, and I am at peace with the fact I can't watch the rest of my DVDs in my lifetime. Every time I watch a new movie that's crap, I have missed watching Back to the Future again. This collection would take multiple people years to go through.
So it's worth pointing out, which I haven't mentioned yet, that the guy used a special coding system to label the tapes, and we can't work out what the coding system is. So it's obviously something he knew what it was, but it's not like it's written on the spine. This is the episodes of a show. So it will take someone a job, or some people, to go through the tapes and actually watch what's on them. So yeah.
Well, luckily it is going to go up to Canberra, and a university up there has got a course on archiving, and they said they're going to use the tapes for years for students to be researching, cataloguing what's on everything, digitalising everything that needs to be, and getting it to the right copyright holders or the National Archives. So it is the one sort of solution that, after talking to many people, was the best one to save the collection and make sure it actually gets gone through. Even though it might take years to do, it isn't being trashed, and it isn't being split up. The sad thing is, when I was talking about the tapes, they said most of the pneumatic ones got hard rubbished, and they were the more interesting ones because they were from the 70s and were more likely to contain interesting or missing material. But what I've never done on this show before, and this was such an amazing place, I have taken photos and video walkthroughs of what this was like. And you've got to remember, this is after all the trash was taken out, and there are still areas I cannot get into because it is piled up with rubbish in front of it.
Do you want the photos first or the video?
Let's go with the photos, just so I can discuss what we're seeing, and then we'll go with the video after.
And it was worth noting that there was a lot of beta tapes. So apparently the guy would record on them once, stick them back in their original boxes, and file them away. So they wouldn't even be watched. So beta tapes, who knows about beta tapes these days? So
yeah.
Anyway,
well, he recorded on beta apparently because it was a better format.
It was.
And he had two tape machines recording simultaneously at opposite ends of the house, and he would be going and recording one channel on one and going down to the other house and recording another channel and going backwards and forwards. So it was apparently a lifetime process, and one of the biggest archives you're ever going to see.
Christy said, I hope the tape hasn't degraded too much. I guess we'll find out as time goes on, but they only got used once and put away, so they may be okay, but we'll find out. All right, let's get into the pictures. So where you go, dude?
So, this was the stuff, what was the good stuff that was in the garage. And you can see there's a mountain of tubs. You can see that dark area is a guy climbing up. So those tubs are about 6 deep and about 10 across, and they were full of magazines. A lot of them were the Eagle Moss toys with magazines. They were full of different runs of different magazines. They were full of rack toys, which are the cheap toys you get off of racks at the reject shop and stuff like that. They were full of comics. And one of the thing that blows my mind, and this is a hoarding thing, not a collector, he bought stuff, and this is not just from any particular shop. It's like from Brash's, from JB Hi-Fi, from the Maya record bar, and he never actually took it out of the bags that he bought it in. So he would buy comics, and they would still be in the Minotaur books bag from the 80s with all those wild pop culture designs on, and they were sealed and never opened since the 80s. So he collected stuff, brought it home, alternate worlds, from a lot of different records and music shops that don't exist anymore. And even going through the bags, I was like, wow, none of these bags would even exist, because it wasn't just the paper goods that he kept, it was everything. So he must have had a compulsion to buy stuff, and then when he got it home, he would just put it somewhere and never open it. And this is how the rooms stacked up.
All right, Colin's asked what's happened to the Eagle Moss collection. It's with you.
Yep. And Colin, we have about 150 new Star Trek Eagle Moss ships, everyone you can imagine.
Very good. All right. So the other thing that came out too is obviously, and Rusky Babes will be well aware of this. Anybody who was into recording a lot of shit back in the day, you needed the machines to be able to do it. All right. And there's a huge pile of stuff regarding hardware. And here's just couple of photos of that.
Well, as I said, the guy was recording right back to the 70s, and it seemed what he did, he would buy the state-of-the-art recorder for the time and use it until the next state-of-the-art recorder came out, and the original one would go down into the garage and just be put there. This is not the garage, sorry, under the house. And you can see there is like almost a time tunnel going backwards as you go down the stacks of old machines that had been retired as he got new ones, and they go way down under the entire house, all these different formats of machines and all these different eras. So you have betas, VHS, you have the top end ones, which when I was recording stuff in the 80s, I dreamed of, which had the stereo balancers on and stuff like that, and multi-zones, which was super expensive back then and you just couldn't get. And this guy had multiples of them. He also had, before there was commercial video machines, you would see the big bulky ones that were only sort of in schools or maybe in hospitals and places like that, where the actual machine was about 4 or 5 times as big as they were a couple of years later. And they used to be wheeled out on trolleys, I remember when I was in primary school. So he had those as the very early domestic formats, but he had pre-domestic formats. So he had pneumatic machines, which is like what a television station uses, and he had reel-to-reel formats as well. So I had the guy from the National Archives come out, and he was saying, some of these formats I have never seen in a collection before. This guy was the real deal. He recorded everything, which again is why I just dread to think what was lost when everything was hard rubbished from the house.
This picture is very hard to see, so we might go through this with them pretty quickly.
Okay, so as you can see, that's sort of under the house, and there was multiple doors to under the house, and every one you would open up, and it would be, you can see there's boxes and boxes of just tapes in different formats, and then there's old tins, and they were all full of different things, usually to do with audio visual stuff. Again, you can't really see because it's so dark under there, but the bottom ones were under the house, and they go all the way back. And it just goes on. And I had the guy from the Sound Archives crawling under there with a torch, and I heard him call off in the distance, "Aaron, good news. There's more boxes of beta tapes under here." So the guy had actually filled up under the house with boxes of tapes as well.
So once again, if you're like Rusky Babes is watching this, and other people who are really into their videos back in the day, you'll certainly appreciate this sort of ideal. Beta tapes and the coding and the description as to what's on them.
Yep. So here is some of the formats and different formats, because I was taking photos and sending them to different archive bodies to see which was the best thing to do with them. And you can see there are magnetic tapes and there's reel-to-reel tapes. They go there, and there's boxes and boxes of them. And then there's VHS, but the main format he used was beta. So this is one of the sheds, and he had sheds, greenhouses, under the house, and the entire house filled with this. So for people going, I'd take it and I'd research what was in it, it's absolutely impossible. One person could not look at this collection in their lifetime. And probably a lot of the formats would only play on the machines that he has under the house, which is one of the reasons it was important to keep the collection together, because I don't know if you know this, Dags, but sometimes when you record on something, the only thing you're ever going to be able to play it back in is on the machine you originally recorded it on. And even if you have the same format from machine to machine, sometimes they still don't work.
Especially if they're really, really old too. And so, yeah, there is definitely the brittle factor. I mean, you do think straight away, who the hell has a beta recorder out there? So, yeah, you know.
And so here we get to some of the interesting stuff. There's obviously the domestic tapes on the left, but then there's reel-to-reels, and up the top there, they're pneumatic tapes, and they're the things where it starts to get interesting because they go back to the 70s, and these can be the tapes that television programs that have been destroyed by the archives still exist on. Looking at these, don't think there's going to be anything amazing on them. They look like they came out of a university, so if anything, they probably tutorial programs or language programs or something like that, which is a bit sad. And they did say most of the pneumatics were the ones that were thrown out because who would want them, which was a bit disturbing to hear. But he had X Channel 7, and that's a Sony X Channel 7 pneumatic player. So he was recording on the industrial formats that the television stations use themselves. So that is the first time I have ever seen that in a house. I've seen collections of videos and betas and VHS, and usually there's a bookshelf full, but this is next level crazy, the amount of audio material that's there.
So there's been a couple of comments already about saying, oh, send the videos off to a friend. I know a dude who could sit and watch them. I know somebody who could watch them. Okay, so send them all this and see how they go.
So this is a small percentage. And when I first went there, I actually thought that the guy had just bought, maybe when videos went out, he'd just gone somewhere and bought everything that was just left cheap. So he had blank videotapes. No, every single one of these, they look like almost brand new boxes. He bought them as bulk boxes. He opened them. He slit them open. He slid the tape out, so even the plastic is still around the sleeve. He recorded them once. He slipped them back into the sleeve, sealed up the boxes, and archived them. And they have sat there for 20, 30 years. And he has thousands and thousands of them. What do you think of that, Dags? That is pretty mind-blowing, isn't it?
So, Rusky Babes, I know he loves his tapes. So, dude, we'll get that box up here to you. And there's probably 10 tapes to a box. So, and they go for 3 hours a pop. So, knock yourself out, son. And see how long it takes you to go all the way down and up and around and away from there. Isn't that insane? So,
well, like I said, I think that is, and here's the interesting thing. Here's his code. So this was what was in the tapes. He didn't use the labels. He had his own code, and it looks like half hieroglyphics and half dates and maybe the format of the tape and stuff like that. I don't even know if that 96112 is the 9th of the 6th, 2012. I don't know if he was still recording videos then, or if it's just something else. I don't know why the question marks are there. I hope it's not because it's Docky Who. And I don't know, how you would decipher it, because there is nothing to do with the actual program that's recorded on the tapes. It looks like maybe dates and when it was recorded, and that's about it. But they said when he wore out the videos and went over to digital, the guy was still doing it up until he passed away, and he was recording directly onto USB sticks and drives, and he was buying them and recording them, and so the family could clear them. They were getting 10 of them and putting them on eBay and selling them for $10 after he recorded on them, because he didn't even rewatch the stuff. So he didn't know he was buying stuff, recording it and putting it in boxes, and then the family was just reselling it because it was that much of a mania. And like I said, he was running around the house recording different stations at different times just to keep this archive going. So this is the next level of hoarding in, like I said, 30 years of secondhand dealing. This is the craziest video collection I have ever seen.
So, Kelvin, a couple of things. VTC probably is the video time code. I mean, when I saw Count, I thought it might have been Countdown, the series, but otherwise you could take guesses. And until someone actually watches that tape, what you would do is you'd get the tape with that code, watch it and go, okay, we can kind of decipher what it all means. Bearing in mind, video recorders used to have counters on the front, so that's possibly what that means, but who really knows?
Well, the other thing there, Dags, that means it's totally useless, because a Toshiba counter and a Sony counter would be, so unless you put it on the machine it was recorded on, as soon as he replaced the machine, none of his codes would work and match up anymore, which is why this is just one of those insanely crazy collections. It is really unbelievable. Now, like a lot of houses that are inhabited by hoarders and collectors like this, it wasn't a clean place. The carpets had been moldy and ripped up. There was holes in the roof, so they were leaking, and there was just tins underneath collecting water. The whole thing was dusty and murky and moldy and a health hazard. And this is no joke. Sorry, do you want to say something?
I was going to say I'll put the video on in a sec, so otherwise you could end up repeating yourself. So I'll put it on now.
Put it on, and I'll talk over the video. So
yeah, okay.
I recorded brief walkthroughs, and Dags has put it all together so we can watch. But I have been out to the estate a couple of days, and Dags was looking over the shop. And one of the days I was coming back, I said I don't feel well. I've got to go home. And I had a Stranger Things moment where I felt so ill from being in the house for so long. I just got into the shower and sat on the ground for half an hour, and I was coughing up mucus that had black strands and stuff in it just from being in this house. So pretty disgusting. After that, I'll always wear a mask going to a place like this because it just was not good. And I can't believe the guy was living there.
All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to show you. So it was filmed on a phone, so Aaron didn't have the foresight to turn it wide, so it's upwards. And we're just going to talk over it. We'll stop from time to time. It only goes for a few minutes, but it'll give you a bit of an insight as to what happened. Now, of course, as Aaron mentioned, he found out about this thing on Thursday, had to go there on Friday, Saturday, and of course it rained on Friday, so that didn't help matters. And there was a bit of a panic to get this stuff out because the estate people were going to come in and chuck everything else out. So it was kind of nuts. And I like this. Do you record on VHS? Who records on VHS anymore, Kelvin? You need to get with the times, dude. He's now recording on his phone. So I'm just going to put this in, and we'll have a bit of a chat about this as we go along. And there's no sound, obviously. And so this is the entrance into the underground bit. Is that right?
Yeah. So there were multiple entrances to underground, and this was, I think, the one at the end. So this had, when you look up, that's looking back under the house, and all the way up under the house is storage. And you can see just on the ground there is old video formats, and that's the U-matic one. And then there's shelves full, and they're just stacked up under the house. And when you go around, you can see there was other machines, and there's reel-to-reel tapes for reel-to-reel stuff, and then there's turntables and different decks and stuff like this. This was an other under the house area. I couldn't get in as far there because it was a bit more, you can see on the left and the right, it's a bit built up with stuff, but I pulled the there's another pile of tapes. This is inside the house. So, this is where I'm using the crowbar or a pry bar on a wardrobe. Everything had fallen down on the inside of it. So sorry, that isn't the greatest film. But this is where all the show bags were. And there are other cupboards that I can't get into that I'm going to go and get into tomorrow and see what's there. So when I got into that one, I had to pull the door off. That's the door sitting on the wall. And then you can see that probably had not been opened in decades, and all the shelves had collapsed and they were just inside there. So this is the house from the outside. It's a little bit overgrown, but you wouldn't realize that it is just such a mess in there. And now this is, I think, one of the lounge rooms. There's multiple rooms. You can see how even though everything's been taken out of the house that is junk, it is just still covered in stuff everywhere. And I think you can see the kitchens and the bathrooms are unusable because everywhere there was flat space, it's just been built up and used to put stuff on. So even though they cleared it out, the guy still had been accumulating more and moving stuff around. So you can see what's interesting. There's bags there that look pretty new, and you can see in there's piles of VHS boxes again, or beta boxes and more up there. I haven't got into those drawers because there's rubbish in front of them and I just can't climb into it. So it's still, see, there's old tape formats down there. There's piles of stuff all over the floor. I can't get to this wardrobe in the corner there because you can see there's tons of stuff there. So there's lots of potential. And again, more tapes. These are all different ones. So there's rooms and rooms and boxes of tapes. And some of the tubs are filled with tapes too. There's old Alternate Worlds bags there, those yellow ones that were brought from Alternate Worlds in the 80s, brought back and just left. These are tubs and tubs of magazines. And as you can see, there are thousands of magazines. And they're really weird topics. They're electronic magazines, they're military magazines, they're gun magazines. This is the computer room, and this hadn't been used for years either. And you can see on the there's actually hard floppy disks and and stuff like that. And again, there's just tubs and tubs and stuff that is going to take me forever to go through at the moment, because there's a chance that it might get thrown out. It's more a priority getting the tubs out and getting them somewhere where I can sort through them properly, because who knows what's there. And you'd absolutely hate for anything missing to be junked and taken to landfill. So this is the kitchen. You can see you just could not use the kitchen. There's a bathroom. I don't know if I took. There's stuff piled up in the shower, so you couldn't use the shower. There is one toilet in there that looked like it hadn't been cleaned in about 50 years, so you don't want to go there and need to. There's the bathroom, so you just couldn't go in the bathroom. So it is interesting that after all the stuff was taken out, there's still this amount. And if you look, I didn't really take it to the left there. There was just piles of wires and electronics. That was apparently how the whole house was, piled up to about head high. And these are all different rooms. I haven't repeated anywhere. It is just a long, old, rambling house. So you can see, again, all the different electronics. And this is a different hallway. So yeah, it is one of those experiences. There's records as well. That was the cupboard I jemmied open later. On the side of this, you can see there's just years and years of comics. I did take some pictures. They're all in magazine folders. And then there's tapes. And then on top of the tapes, there's stuck more things. And yeah, again, these wardrobes, they're all full of, nothing was the same. It was like there'll be a G.I. Joe collection and a Lego collection, and they're all just jumbled on top of each other, and they're still all in the original bags that they came home from the shop in. This is going down to the other end of the house. So you can see, again, this is the room, and it's a medical bed that was in. This was his bedroom, and there was like almost a metal bed and a medical sort of hospital TV attached to the wall. This is outside, and you can see, you know, it is, and this is the garage where there's more tubs of magazines and stuff like that. And this is where they put the stuff that they thought was better. So it was full of eagle moss. There's Chad sorting through the stuff. There's pneumatic tapes. Just we found them in the garage kind of thing. This is back inside the house. I think we did this. This is the lounge room. I think we saw some of this before. This is the shed with one of the outside sheds that's just full of tapes. So all of these boxes are basically black label tapes with nothing noted on them. There are some VHS there, but all the ones on the wall there are a beta. And you can see there are just hundreds and hundreds of tapes, and they are in tubs and they go back. Like I said, probably... Have you ever known a collector, Dags, that's had that many tapes back in the day when tapes were a thing?
Not that many. I mean, Rusky Babes had a lot. Jeffro had a lot. You had a lot. There's a guy called Richard Friedland had a lot, but that was pretty nuts, that's for sure. So, and there's a couple of other people I know who've got a lot of tapes as well. But how about that, everybody? So, yes.
So there you go. There's an insight into why my life has been so crazy busy the last week, and I haven't had time to do much. But it's an amazing experience to be able to go into a house like that and just walk through and see the history. And it's almost like walking back in time, where you see modern formats in the house, and then the further down you go, the older it gets, and it's all just been kept and never thrown out. I think Joe was saying, does it have the receipts? Every single item still had the receipt from the shop that it was bought tucked inside it as well. And often there'd be a note on it. So he bought it, categorized it, and filed it away. But it was filed away meant took it to a room and put it down and just left it there forever. Crazy stuff.
Yeah. So Phil said it's definitely crazy. Guy, I like the idea. Collectively buy the whole place, and together we could go through it all. It's probably be dumped, and there'll be apartments on it before you know it. But it's just the way things have worked out, and time will tell as to how it all transpires. But for now, some of the more collectible stuff has ended up at Aaron's store. And if you go in there now, it's completely like you're an asteroid field. There's just tubs of shit everywhere. Isn't that right, Mr. Aaron?
Come and please buy stuff. So the shop is totally bombed out at the moment. I think I took 40 crates full of toys back to the shop, and about 30 of them wound up in the shop, and 10 of them are in a customer's garage around the corner. That's how desperate for space we are.
Chrissy said she wants to cry for the guy. Yeah, it's kind of funny, isn't it? I mean, this is what we were discussing earlier about having all this stuff, and it's just sort of buried away. Tapes that have never been watched, they've just been recorded on. And it's that whole thing of just accumulation and accumulation to the point where it's actually bad for your health. And then, of course, you drop off the perch, and it's just like, well, was it worth having it in the first place? From the person's perspective, probably. But it's where it ends up now is anybody's guess. And as was mentioned, I mean, Aaron stepped in and he saved a lot of it. Otherwise, it all would have just been hard. What do you call it? Landfill.
It is one of those
rubbish.
things.
So yeah.
Any secondhand dealer, I reckon 90% that went in would not have recognised there was any value for missing material at all. They'd have seen beta and VHS tapes and said the work to process this is actually more than the tapes are worth, so bin them. So in that respect, even though they threw out a lot, at least what is left is getting saved, and it's going to, like I said, be donated to Canberra, and they are going to dedicate the collection as his name, and it'll go into the National Archives, the stuff that's of interest. So at least his legacy from doing this will get him a footnote in history.
You are right, Rusky Babes. Videotapes, by their very definition, were expensive, so there must have been a lot of money just spent on tapes just for that alone. Yeah, you're right. It is beyond human comprehension. There was a comment here. What did you get for the shop? Just very quickly.
Well, because it was a lot of stuff that was, I guess, from news agencies and places like that. It was entire runs of the Eagle Moss magazine series. So all the Star Trek ships, which I mentioned before, and Doctor Who, and those amazing Star Trek fact files that every Trekker wants in their collection. And then there was like really weird stuff like the rack toys. When I talk about rack toys, they're cheap toys that go into the reject shop that are very just hung on racks. So a lot of guns and costumes and cowboys and stuff like that. And when I said we got the show bags and they're amazing, we showed last week like the Rambo show bag, and we got items with Rambo on it. And I do remember one of those sort of lost toys. You could get them for everything. You could get them for V, you could get them to James Bond. They were like little packs that would have a gun, a compass, maybe a ID card or something like that. And they used to be in all the cheap shops. Someone would get a license. I don't know if they were licensed or not. A lot of that kind of stuff that you just don't see anymore. So there's a lot of interest in it. Nothing that I can say is absolutely amazing, though. It's more a just mid-level quantity of just so much stuff, like entire collections of stuff. The show bags are probably the most interesting things.
So if you want to see what came out of that house, go to Aaron's store. That's the easiest way. And just have a bit of a sticky beak around and check it all out. And in the interim, there's a discount going on, and that is 85% off my jokes. So yeah, that's 85% of zero is still zero also. Anyway, we're going to finish up for the night. There was a lot of comments about the whole thing. We're going to have to sort of like tackle them another time. But yes, it's an interesting story, and it all occurred after last Wednesday, after last week's episode. It all just sort of went from there, and this is where we are now. So, which is particularly cool. Now, the important thing, of course, is tomorrow night. Aaron and Mr. The Soul Greg King will be making his first appearance on a show to talk about the Who Report. So if you're into Docu Who, you got to go and check that out. It's going to be very, very exciting. Any final words before we sign off for the evening, Mr. Aaron?
Thanks, everyone, for sticking around tonight and experience a bit of a different side to Rip It Off the Card. It's more the practical side of what we do in our day-to-day life. I hope you all found it interesting. Next time we'll be back on track, and it'll be more of a regular episode. But thanks, guys.
Very good. And tomorrow I expect everybody to be sitting there humming the thing. Woo, woo! All right, we'll leave you to it. And yeah, don't be a hoarder. Have your collections, put them on displays and all the rest of it. But whatever you do, make sure you keep all those collectibles mint in box.
Or you can always rip them off the card.
Don't do it. All right, see you guys. Take care. Bye-bye.
Good night.